November 2005. Video games are about to go through a revolution. Maybe not everyone knows it just yet, but this is when the Xbox 360 is about to come out and usher in a new era of high-definition visuals, as well as online connectivity that hadn't really been seen at such a scale before, at least for console gaming. This is a really interesting transitional period in video games. The industry is going through a massive shift. The players are going through a massive shift, and the actual games that are coming out are going through a massive shift. It's such a massive shift, you might have just heard my voice crack, but let's pretend that didn't happen. So anyway, I thought it would be really fun to take a look at this slice of gaming history, and we're going to do that by going through some old gaming magazines at the time. They're really going to give us a picture of what's going on with video games, and I'll also throw in some videos of the games we're talking about as we flip through the pages, because, you know, it's a video. We want to see motion. We don't want to just look at screenshots, but we're going to be taking a look at EGM and GamePro, two huge magazines from their era, and I wanted to take a look at Game Informer as well, but Game Informer is still around in a different capacity, and historically, they're not really down for you to show their magazine like in a video or on a stream or something like that, so we're just going to not poke the Game Informer bear. It should be okay though. EGM and GamePro, they're awesome. They're really fun to go through, and they'll definitely give us a clear picture of what's going on with video games in November 2005, right before the 360 launches. Let's jump right in. All right, here we go. We got EGM, the Ultimate Xbox 360 Launch Guide Edition. We got a bunch of Xboxes here with faceplates on the cover. Let's jump right in. And of course, like every great magazine, you start things off with an ad. We got Gretzky Hockey, Gretzky NHL 06. Actually really enjoy this ad. There's something that it tickles in my monkey brain where it's like, there's a bunch of Gretzkys out here. This was from an era where you could put the name of a famous person in front of a sports game, and, you know, it didn't cost too much to make, so you can make a reasonable amount as a company selling that kind of game. And we see some of that still in mobile gaming at times, but let's go to the next page. Now we got a Tiger Woods 06 ad. Tiger Woods 06, if I'm remembering right, and I'm pretty sure I am, it was really well received. People love Tiger Woods 06. You versus Tiger here, you know, keep it simple, and then eventually you fail because you suck at golf. Your heart will pound, your hands will sweat, your mind will race. That's what it's like to play golf with Tiger. This feels like marketing copy that was written by people who maybe don't know golf and were like, I don't know, we got to make this game exciting because it doesn't seem exciting to us. Not that I'm saying golf is not exciting. Golf people, don't come at me in the comments. Golf is cool. I'm just saying the marketing copy is a bit silly. Let's move on though. We got, oh boy, we got Total Overdose, A Gunslinger's Tale in Mexico. And you'll notice here, they're like, we really want you to buy this game. We need you to buy this game. So what if we packed in a first look of the next Tomb Raider? Very interesting. So this game, it's aptly described here by GameSpot, which is still around, by the way. Not to be confused with GameStop. GameSpot's the video game website. So they're saying it's got elements of Max Payne, Tony Hawk, and Robert Rodriguez's films. I don't know about that last one, but it's got the slow-mo like Max Payne. It's got the sort of, not trick system, but it's got a scoring system like Tony Hawk, so I can see how you can get there. This game was reviewed okay at the time. People, you know, it's coming from a different era where the kind of scale and scope of video games is a bit different, so kind of standards are different. And this game, you know, it was fine. It got fine reviews. I guarantee you there's at least one person watching this video that's like, oh man, I love that game as a kid or as a teenager, or, you know, going to Blockbuster. And I think you'll find that to be a common theme with a lot of the games that we'll be looking at. But anyway, let's move on to the next page. So now we got an ad for Gun. So Gun was a multi-generational game. It was on the PS2 era of consoles and 360 as well. It was a Western game, which, you know, that genre was sorely lacking at the time. So it reviewed kind of, you know, in a weirdly mixed fashion. Some people really loved this game. Some people really hated this game. And it stirred up some controversy as well with Native American groups about how they were portrayed in this game at the time. And all in all, Gun's one of those games where, again, you'll find somebody somewhere that's like, oh man, I love that game. It's one of my favorite games. But when you kind of look back at it now, it's from a different era. It maybe doesn't have the sensibilities of a more modern game, and it is just a different scale and scope. So let's move on. We got Battlefront 2. Now, if I am remembering right, Battlefront 2 is either out by the time this magazine is published, or it's just about to come out, or I'm just completely messing up that timeline. But of course, Battlefront 2, Star Wars, classic Star Wars shooter. People to this day still play it in different versions, and you just love to see it. It's from Pandemic. Rest in peace, Pandemic. You guys were awesome. We got Perfect Dark Zero coming for the Xbox 360. 2020. Corporations control everything. Wait. Oh, you got way too real there, Joanna. Joanna Dark. I think that was your name, right? Oh, gosh. Way too real. Of course, Perfect Dark Zero was a follow-up to a beloved shooter, Perfect Dark, on Nintendo 64. Now, we'll talk more about Perfect Dark Zero later on, because the magazine will end up covering it. Let's move on for now. Ooh, we got the table of contents here. Delayed flashbang warning. Sorry if your screen is way too bright for this, but let's take a look at, obviously the cover story is the Xbox 360, but we got a kind of letter here from the editor, from Dan Shu. And before you come at me for saying his name wrong, Dan Shu goes by Dan Shu. I'm not making that up. Here you go. It's a nickname of his. All right, so let's see what Dan is saying. So he's saying that Perfect Dark Zero could be the top-selling game for 360, followed by Madden NFL 06. That's really interesting. So Perfect Dark Zero lived in this space up until the release of the 360, where a lot of people thought maybe it could be the Halo killer. And a lot of games thought they could be the Halo killer. So over here, Dan is saying that basically Perfect Dark Zero is going to, impress people. It's going to have a huge following, but that ultimately people will go back to Halo after Perfect Dark's kind of like lived out its maybe launch hype, something like that. And that's, it's kind of true what's going on here. Or what Dan is predicting. Perfect Dark Zero, it didn't set the world on fire. So it did get some really excellent reviews from some places, and some players, love it like any video game. But overall, it didn't kind of change the game, if you will, kind of like a Call of Duty did or like a Halo did. Let's see what else Dan is saying here. So Sony will scramble to get any PS3 news out that it can to combat Microsoft's better than expected sales of the 360. It's really interesting how this is put together because, yeah, Sony did really get caught out by the 360 launching in advance, and just kind of how featured the 360 was in a different way compared to the PS3. Not that the PS3 was a bad system or anything like that. It's just that the 360 was really living on the cutting edge. Now, let's see what Dan says about Nintendo. Nintendo's going to sit back, chill. Yeah, continue to live in its own world. That's kind of Nintendo, right? To a team. Nintendo continues to do that to this day. They continue to operate at their own pace, and people love them for it, for the most part. There's always people that want 4K Nintendo, 8K Nintendo, or maybe if you're watching this many years in the future, 6,000K Nintendo. But Nintendo operates on its own pace, and you have to respect them for that. Now let's move on to the next page. Ooh, okay, so here we have a look at King Kong, an early 360 first-person shooter, but notice here what it says advertisement. This is sponsored content, so much in the way that you would see, people don't say that. In the way that you would see sponsored content on a website, this isn't an article, this is an advertisement. So we're not going to really spend time looking at this too much, but King Kong, or maybe it was just called Kong. No, what am I saying? It's right here. Peter Jackson's King Kong. It was a really, really liked game at the time. People were surprised by how interesting it was, how well it played. If you look at it from the perspective of, is it more of like a PS2 game or is it more of a 360 game? It lives somewhere in that cross-generational space where it didn't quite have the scope of a next-gen game at the time, but it was further along towards that than it was to a PS2 game. So There's lots of people that really love this game. It reviewed pretty well as well. It was very surprising to have this come out and be pretty rad, because historically, movie licensed games, especially in this era, they weren't doing so hot in terms of quality. Now, next up, all right, we got letters from the readers here, and I might have to end up censoring this partially. We'll see what YouTube says once I upload the uncensored version. But we got some art here. And Wes here sent a letter, the letter of the month, and he won a copy of Advance Wars Dual Strike because of this letter. So let's just read it. So Twilight Princess got delayed, right? And here's what's going on. Wes says, I've heard the news. Zelda Twilight Princess has been delayed until next year. Actually, I'm not that surprised. I know the ways of Nintendo. Scary time, boys and girls. I actually like this game that Nintendo plays with us. This tease that they do so well. They give you a peek at what you want and then take it away, give it a release date, and then change it. It's cool, though. I like to be teased. I like waiting for the games to come out, getting excited for screenshots and exclusive coverage. To dream of swinging that sword, slaying a moblin, collecting hearts, and finding those damn jars. I'm a sick bastard, Nintendo. And drip that hot candle wax. Wait, did I? Yeah, I did just read that. And drip that hot candle wax of new screenshots on my naked body. Tickle me with Rock's feather until I beg to play the game. Make me collect them all. I'm the gimp locked in the basement of Tom Nook's shop. Wes. Whew. Congrats, Wes. Your slightly creepy take wins a copy of Advance Wars Dual Strike. I just kicked the camera. Hopefully it didn't shake too much for you. Sorry about that. Yeah, that is an illustration. Let's move on, shall we? We got some ads coming up here for Eco Shadow of the Colossus and a poster for it. That's why it's looking kind of weird. We're gonna skip that. We'll talk about Shadow of the Colossus later. Don't worry. I'm not hating on Shadow of the Colossus or anything like that. But let's move on to the next page here. So we got an ad for The Warriors coming October 2005. Warriors is a game that kind of, I want to say it felt like it came out of nowhere. Obviously, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's Rockstar. And there I go, showing you my taskbar. Okay, that's weird. Obviously, it's Rockstar. Rockstar loves, a specific era of movies, and they always try to do with them what they can. So it made sense for them to make a Warriors game. People really enjoyed the Warriors game. It's something people still talk about to this day, wanting another Warriors game, much in the way that people talk about Bully. So that's really interesting to see. What do we got here? We got some more letters here. Ooh, there's a Metal Gear one. So I think Delpara here, or Delpera, apologies, is speculating about Metal Gear Solid 4. The more I read about MGS4, the more confident I am. You know what? Let's just do that again. The more I read about MGS4, the more confident I am that I know where the game will take place. I knew it the very first time I read an interview with Kojima. He said it'll be someplace hard to hide. He also said that it will be the sequel to MGS2. If you were able to understand the story of MGS2... Oh, wait, hold on. Let me read that in a better way. If you were able to understand the story of MGS2, it should be fairly clear that number 4 is going to have to do with... why can't I read this letter? It should be fairly clear that 4 is going to have to do with digital something or another. Others have guessed a desert or a city, but there are plenty of places to hide there. My guess, MGS4 will be, fake. It'll take place in a computer system. Well, Delpera, sorry, bud, but MGS4 did have desert environments. It did have city environments. It did not have fake environments. It's not a fake game. You play that game for reals. So interesting speculation, and actually really interesting point here by Kojima saying that it'll be someplace to hide. He also said that it'll be a sequel to MGS2. MGS4 really does feel like a sequel to MGS2 in a way that, no other MGS game since then has felt, which, makes sense. They're all going for different things, but it's crazy how much it feels exactly like a direct sequel to MGS2, just with its world, its storytelling, everything. It's awesome. I love MGS4 so much. We got an ad here from from Russia with Love 007 James Bond game. This was from an era where there were a bunch more James Bond games than there are these days. But moving on, we have DS versus PSP. Boy, oh boy, this was such a big topic. And history has determined the Nintendo DS to be the winner. But at the end of the day, like, both platforms were awesome. They did different things. They had different experiences. They had different kinds of games and served different purposes. And I love them both. Love my PSP. Love my DS. I don't love that I have like 3 versions of a DS. I don't love that I have like 2 different PSPs or have had 3 different PSPs. But, it is what it is. What I wanted to focus on here, excuse me, that's really interesting is the magazine is saying that the DS isn't really there with its games, and kind of same for PSP. And yeah, when these 2 systems launched, it wasn't like the biggest, revolution that's happening, but they had so many great games over the course of their lifespans. And then here we have an example of classic video game magazine writing from this era. So we tend to think of magazines, or at least some people tend to think of magazines from the past as maybe being a little bit more high class, or maybe like, because it's printed, we have to put a lot more effort into the words that were written, things like that. But not really. Web content is closer to magazines, or magazines are closer to web content than they are to anything else. So here we have EGM telling you what the DS gamer is like, okay? Gameplay is key. You want innovation. You don't care about top 3D graphics. You're interested in classic gaming. You cream your jeans. Like, come on, man. Why you gotta say this weird stuff? Like, what are you talking about? No one talks like that. Shame on you. Gosh. Talking about PictoChat, that is real. Medios is legit. The DS gamer is secretly a rebel like that. Like, why is this video game magazine that is for me as a nerd, why is it like making fun of me? Like, come on. That's just like rude. But that was like the video game print at the time, and a lot of video game humor was like that. It was like, it wasn't self-deprecating. It was like, you're a nerd, but I'm a cooler nerd. It is what it is. PSP gamers, you're interested in visual stimulation. Who cares about if the games play well? You want them to look good. You want mature content because, the DS is for children. Music and movies are as enjoyable as games. UMD movies are a great way to kill an hour or 2. What movie is 1 hour long? Like, that's not a movie. Get out of here. That's that's an anime special or something like that. Web browsing on the go rocks too. Dog, nobody cared about the PSP web browser. Let's be real. Let's move on. This is a classic video game magazine writing. We'll see more of that as we keep going through this magazine. So next up, we have a feature about how gaming helps out with your brain. Interesting that there's a feature about this because video games at this time were still seen as like the brain rotting activity that they can be if you let them. If you let them as a parent, or, maybe you struggle with addiction or something like that. Not that I'm saying you're letting addiction win, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that any activity can be a brain rot activity, if it's not in moderation, or if you're not able to exercise self-control for various reasons. Sometimes for reasons that are out of your own control. But this was kind of like the lay of the land at the time. So in terms of international games, or like import games, we got Osu Wenden? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Apologies. It's been a long time. But this series of games was awesome. You kind of play rhythm-based, quirky, WarioWare style minigames. WarioWare in the sense of like it's deeply unhinged, as you can kind of see from the screenshots here. Super awesome game, super fun to see it in here. We got a little column about Civilization 4. We got Doom here, a preview for the movie. So I saw Doom in theaters, I think, opening week I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't go in with the expectation of like, ew, this is gonna suck so much. I'm gonna hate watch this, and I didn't have a terrible time. Like it's a bad movie. It's got The Rock in it, obviously, before his, before he became the world's biggest movie star or whatever the heck he is these days, and it's got Carl Urban as well. You know, you love him from The Boys, you love him from Star Trek, you love him from everything he's in. But yeah, the movie, it's just, it was a pretty cookie cutter B grade movie with a couple of cool sequences. I wouldn't hate it if it was playing in the background somewhere or anything like that. But yeah, it didn't set the world on fire. So we got, a preview of the Warriors. We already talked about it a little bit. Let's just take a look at some of these screenshots. I'm always curious to see kind of in an era where it was harder to take screenshots, what was kind of selected. So we got, reviving fallen comrades here. What else we got? Some nice kicks, nice action shot here, very cinematic. Running away from the cops here. Awesome. Let's move on. Ooh, we got an ad for Spartan Total Warrior, not to be confused with the Total War games. This is one of those games where you could, like, the way that you could classify it genre-wise could be like 3 or 4 different genres, because genre names are kind of like weird. 3D, behind the back, you go around, you stab people a lot. It's not quite the character action game that like a God of War is. It's more of a hack and slash. Doesn't really matter, I guess. We're spending too much time talking about meaningless genres anyway, but this game came out. It was reviewed okay. Kind of like some of the other games we've already talked about. Like, there's people that love this game. There's people that are like, I, remember renting it from Blockbuster or whatever. And there's people that played it and were like, all right, let's move on. So, it's a game that has its fans, but different era, different scope, different scale. Got an ad here for Cameo. Of course, that's one of the 360 launch games, if I'm remembering right. I think I am. From Rare, action-adventure game where you run around the world, do some platforming, solve some puzzles, and you can transform into different creatures. There are people that to this day will be like, Cameo, my favorite game. Give me another one. Where is another one? Give me more Cameo. Ooh, okay. Next up, we got a feature for Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence. So like the kind of Game of the Year edition of Metal Gear. And it was going to be getting multiplayer. So multiplayer in Metal Gear Solid 3 was really interesting because when you play that game, you don't really think about it in the sense of like, ooh, these controls would really lend itself well to a multiplayer environment. But people that are into Metal Gear Online are really into Metal Gear Online. It's really awesome to see what they can pull off. They can make it feel cinematic. They can make it look like you're the god of stealth. They can make it look incredible. Meanwhile, when I play MGS3 specifically, and I try to play it online back in the day, I'm like, oh god, how do I aim? What do I do? Oh, there's pressure sensitive buttons. But it's really cool that they added online to MGS3. And it's really cool that this was on the PS2. So kind of ahead of its time. Obviously the PS2 had online, but it wasn't commonplace, and it wasn't like every single game there was an expectation to have online components. So we got a fun little preview here. We got maybe they won't see the obnoxious neon green frog floating above my head. Yeah, I think if you were leading on the scoreboard, if I remember right, you got a little thing above your head so that you were easier to spot. Oh, Metal Gear. Oh, I wish, or I hope that the MGS3 remake that's going to be coming out is going to be awesome. I would love for that to be rad, but we'll see how that turns out. Let me just turn back a couple pages because I just want to take a look at some of the ads we had here during the Metal Gear features. So Gauntlet 7 Sorrows, honestly, not super familiar with this one. Let's see. It looks like it's like a co-op hack and slash. That's cool. I'll have to look at that later on my own time. I'm not really familiar with this one, but it's from Midway. Next up, we got Grip Shift. This game, it was a PSP racer, and it's from that era where you had a lot of like wacky, kooky racers, as you can see from the screenshots here. It didn't really set the world on fire. I don't know anyone whose favorite game is Grip Shift. Maybe there's somebody up there. It didn't get great reviews either, but it's interesting to see that it got an IGN Best of E3 award. So I guess they really liked what they saw at E3 for this game, but when it came out, it didn't really, I guess, live up to IGN's hype. But let's move on. Next up, we got an ad for Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Lockdown, and there's a mobile version of it as well. Interesting. I don't think I've ever played a Rainbow Six game on a flip phone before. That's really interesting. So, Rainbow Six, of course, tactical shooter series. This one didn't light the world on fire in particular. A lot of people thought that maybe it's not as engaging, or maybe it's not as tactical or as in-depth as some of the other Rainbow Sixes. I didn't play this one personally, but I love the Rainbow Six franchise. It is such a staple of like early tactical gaming. And of course, at the time of this recording at least, maybe you're watching it 3,000 years in the future, Rainbow Six Siege is still a huge game, and it's on its like fourth life. That game will live on forever. It's reached Counter-Strike status of like people will just keep playing it no matter what. We got an ad here for Amped 3, a kooky snowboarding game on the Xbox 360 that a lot of people really enjoyed. Next up, top sales charts for 2005. Okay, so they don't list a source here, or maybe they do down here. No, they don't. So maybe it's NDP. In this era, it would probably be NDP unless they have some other sources. So what do we got? Best selling for July 2005. Okay, so that's pretty delayed because this is the November issue, so it's probably NDP. And or was it NPD? Oh no, I'm mixing them up. I forget which is it NDP or NPD? It's gonna drive me crazy. But we got college football selling well. A Halo map pack. We got Pokemon, Fantastic Four. That is interesting. So PS2 Fantastic Four game, movie licensed game. Again, not like an amazing game, but it just goes to show how even in 2005, comic book fans really wanted great comic book games. And even if they weren't great, like Fantastic Four, there was an appetite for it. We had Destroy All Humans, GTA, Lego Star Wars. Wow, crazy to kind of think that Lego Star Wars really was on the PS2. Midnight Club 3, of course, really fun racing game. This was the PSP edition. We had Battlefront as well. Top 10, really quickly, let's look at top 10 PS2. So college football, Fantastic Four. Looks like a lot of the same games. We got Burnout on there as well. Similar games on Xbox, including a Delta Force Black Hawk Down game, sort of a tactical shooter. And of course, Conquer Live and Reloaded. GameCube, Fantastic Four, outselling Smash Bros, Pokemon, Mario Sunshine, Animal Crossing, Kirby, MVP Baseball, a beloved edition of that series. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, ooh. Yeah, just really interesting to see. Fantastic Four was hot in that moment. On the portable side, we got Pokemon reigning supreme, and then rentals-wise, we have sports games and a lot of the other games that we've already seen on the list here. So next up, we got an ad here for Sniper Elite. Yo, Sniper Elite is crazy. So it's that kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like tactical. I guess it's a tactical game, but people who are into kind of like tactical simulation war games maybe wouldn't call it that. So doesn't really matter, I guess. Sniper Elite, it's a sniping game, and Sniper Elite 1, it's crazy to think that it came out on the PS2 because it was maybe 6 or 7 years later until the next one came out, and then until it became like more of a regular franchise. One bullet can change history. Of course, Sniper Elite is pretty famous now for having a bullet cam, so when you fire your bullet, the camera will follow it and travel to its intended target, and you get to see a lot of what goes on when a bullet, hits something. I love watching people play Sniper Elite, but my stupid gamer brain is just not very good at it, unfortunately. We have a column here about some kind of video game education thing. I'm going to skip it just because, again, it had some of that like snarky writing that I'm not a super big fan of. But let's move on to Overheard. So nothing escapes our giant ears in the game industry. Nothing. All right. I want to highlight this. Honestly, are all of you gamers on drugs or what? Attorney Jack Thompson, in a letter to video game webtoon artist Scott, Ramsumer, apologies if I'm mistakenly pronouncing it, mistakenly as I'm reading that. So anyway, let me try that again. Honestly, are all of you gamers on drugs or what? Jack Thompson. My God, Jack Thompson. I can't say too much about Jack Thompson because he'll probably sue me. He's still alive as of this recording. So Jack Thompson is the guy that like hates video games, that freaked out over Grand Theft Auto Hot Coffee being a thing. If you remember, Hot Coffee in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was adult content that was cut but left in the product, and people accessed it with mods. It wasn't even like that explicit or anything like that, but Jack Thompson took that to the media, to the government, and he's all about trying to ban that stuff. And then he was also like upset by Bully, because in Bully, like according to Jack Thompson, in Bully, there's gay sexual content, and somehow like that's wrong. There was like a scene in Bully where like people kiss. It's fine. But Jack Thompson is a dude that just hates video games, and everything that I'm saying here is factual and proven by Jack Thompson. So there's nothing in here, Jack, that you can sue me about. Please don't sue me, Jack. Actually, I think he's disbarred now. So, I mean, you can still sue someone, but at least I'm not going on a trial against a lawyer, I hope. Anyway, let's not give Jack Thompson any more attention. He's had plenty of it during his life. Scott, by the way, is famous for VG Cats. I don't know how VG Cats has aged. I haven't checked in on it in years, but I remember in this era, VG Cats was one of the most premium video game comics or web comics out there. It just was hilarious for its era. It had really great art, usually featuring two cats and some other characters. Again, don't know how that stuff is aged. I try not to look back on like older comedy when I can, just because sometimes, you know, you look at it from a different lens as an older person and it hits different. But I remember for its era, VG Cats was so amazing, so much fun. So what a great web series. Thank you, Scott, for making VG Cats. Let's move on now. So we got an interview here with a product manager at Insomniac, John Fiorito. You might recognize his name because he's one of the top dogs at Insomniac these days. Of course, Insomniac, one of the biggest game companies around right now. And wow, this is really cool. It's really interesting to see an interview with him about the product management job. He has gone on to be, you know, one of the top, I don't know if like he's, I guess, executive level. Yeah, executive level, right? At Insomniac. Also, he's still rocking the same haircut, more or less, which is great to see. I love that. We got an ad here for Castlevania Curse of Darkness. One of the many, many Castlevanias. This one was a 3D one that didn't set the world on fire. #1 rated NBA game, NBA 2K6. Dominate the paint, backcourt perimeter, all of the above. Of course, NBA 2K went on to win, I guess, the war, if you want to call it a war, against NBA Live. And these days, at least at the time of this recording, NBA 2K is the only console / PC like basketball game of its ilk. And next up, we got a feature about PAX, Penny Arcade Expo, and something really interesting here. Jay Allard, one of the like 360, one of the faces of the Xbox 360. So like when you were watching E3 press conferences and they were introducing the 360 and talking big game about it, Jay Allard was one of the guys on stage, and he's a VP of Xbox. He definitely lives life in the fast lane. Okay, whatever. But they asked him some stuff, and it's interesting that they actually got him to respond here. So who would you pick as a Halo 2 partner? He picks Steve Ballmer. He'd scared the crap out of the other team. I think we all know that why he picked Steve here for his famous / infamous antics and shenanigans. Handheld DS. Interesting that he also says that the games aren't quite there yet, but it's kind of more creative or more inspiring. And then what will be the Xbox 360 dream exclusive, Zelda or Mario? Picks Mario. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Like, both series are amazing, but I mean, Mario is the video game mascot, right? Like the ultimate icon of video games. Of course, you want Mario to be on your system if you had that power. So we have here Unmuzzle the Puzzle, Frantics. Feel the power of nonstop 3D puzzle action on the PSP. Another game that kind of, just came and went, didn't really, set the world on fire, which I probably still like. Take a shot every time I say set the world on fire, if you dare. Actually, don't do that, you'll die. We got the countdown, top 10 worst EGM covers. And you know what? I understand how in 2005 covers like this were like, oh my god, that's so cringy, But look at this cover. This cover. Oh my god, this cover fucks. Look at this cover. That is amazing. You got Fabio in here. You got fire. You got a sword. It feels so retro when you look at it now. And just things like this don't really exist anymore unless they're specifically designed to be a throwback. But I can see how in 2005 you might look at this and think like, oh, this is so lame. I can't believe what we were doing. You got some fan art here of Street Fighter, which kind of looks like, maybe it's like AI art now in 2024. We got whatever is going on over here. We got some more fan art, What is, that is not Hadoken. Oh my gosh. Somebody help this Ryu. He looks like he hasn't slept in a while with the bags under his eyes and his arm is broken. Somebody help this man. Wow. Oh, what do we got here? EA has raised the grand prize of its annual Madden Challenge tournament to $100,000. Ooh, big money for the era. I mean, big money nonetheless, but extra big money for that era. Okay, so we got some more top 10 worst EGM covers here, and this is amazing. Come on, guys, this is incredible. Like, yeah, sure, it's bad, whatever, but like, oh my god, it's just so much fun to look at as like a fun retro thing. Again, I see how in 2005 you would think that's bad, but like these days, we like to see that stuff. This is just kind of like, this isn't really a cover. It's just weird vibes here. I'm not liking the vibes that we're putting out here. This is another cover that, oh my god, this goes so hard. Are you kidding me? How is this the worst cover? This goes so hard. And then the worst cover, according to EGM, is their cover for Bruno. If you don't know, Bruce Willis was a singer before he was the Die Hard man. So, yeah, not the best work from EGM here, but I don't know. I wouldn't call this the worst cover. I would call like the fan art stuff worse, but hey, it's open to interpretation, right? So we got an ad here for Urban Rain. From the creators of Tekken and Soul Calibur. That's how they sell it as. Comes the ultimate street baller / multiplayer fighting game. And I don't know if it's true in their ad that this is the first 60 FPS fighting game. That's amazing if it is true. I'm just not 100% sure on that. But, Urban Rain's one of those games where the people that love it to this day still talk about it, and everyone else was like, yeah, whatever, Urban Rain, It reviewed okay-ish, but I don't think there was ever, if I'm remembering right, I'm pretty sure there was never like a sequel or anything like that. Also, funny to see kind of like from the creators of Tekken and Soul Calibur, and then you have a guy who is aping Majima's outfit from the Yakuza series, which is, made by a different company, obviously. Also, this look isn't, exclusive to Yakuza, don't get me wrong, but it's just kind of like funny to see a Majima outfit on a non-Majima character. Let's move on. Oh, actually, before we move on, I want to say that I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right. I want to say that this game had Paul in it, as in Paul from Tekken. Anyway, X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse, the Ultimate Danger Calls for the Ultimate Alliance. This is the series that led to Marvel Ultimate Alliance existing, basically, and it kind of plays in a similar fashion, kind of a isometric-ish polygonal co-op RPG, action RPG. I love X-Men Legends. I love Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I wish we had more games in that style. There was that Marvel... what was it called? They changed the name a couple of times. It might have been called Marvel Omega, the MMO that was kind of in the style of Diablo or kind of Ultimate Alliance. I played that early on. It was a lot of fun. It got shut down, I'm pretty sure. It got changed up a bit as well. But Yeah, more of these types of superhero games, please. I would be a happy boy. All right, rumor mill. We got some rumors over here, and nothing too crazy, but weirdly enough, there's like a rumor of a Family Guy video game here, and like that is enough to put to print, I guess. I don't know. It just kind of seems weird to me to print, Family Guy rumor information where it's like, yeah, Family Guy is a hot property. Of course, there's going to be a Family Guy video game at some point, but I guess, you got to fill space, and the people who are really into Family Guy, they would want to know about Family Guy rumors. It just, maybe with hindsight, it's kind of weird to see it. But of course, Family Guy did go through several cancellations, things like that. So it wasn't always the surefire bet property that it is today. Over here, we got some Bomberman, the return of Bomberman. Where'd you go, Bomberman? Where'd you go? Bomberman, if you don't know, it's a game you play on maps that are like this. I don't know exactly what you would call that, a grid-based map. And then you drop bombs and you try to blow up your opponents. Simple in concept, but when executed well, so amazing, so much fun. I love Bomberman. Of course, there was, we're skipping ahead a bit, but in this era of video games coming up on the 360, they tried to reinvent Bomberman as a third-person gritty thing, and boy, is that one of the worst video games ever made, unfortunately. But let's move on. Ooh, PGR 3, Project Gotham Racing. Oh my goodness gracious, Project Gotham Racing. Oof. Urban racer. So you're not racing like track circuits. You're racing inside of cities for the most part. Amazing series, amazing line of games made by Bizarre, RIP Bizarre. Project Gotham Racing was so good. It was an extremely stylish racer where it wasn't a sim in the way that we look at sims today, like iRacing or Assetto Corsa, but it wasn't an arcade game in the way that we would say Need for Speed Most Wanted is an arcade game. It lived in that sort of simcade game, and my arms are gluing themselves to this chair because just sweating under these lights. Hopefully it's not coming through on the audio, but now I just told you about it anyway. Anyway, PGR, it lived in this kind of simcade space, and it was just so much fun, so satisfying, and it had so much style, so much pizzazz. It also reviewed really well, and PGR 4, to this day, not this one, but 4, has some of the best motion blur you'll ever see in a video game, which is really interesting. All right, next up, we got the Hot 10. 10 more things for you to waste your time and or money on. Okay, these are just, I guess, some purchasing recommendations. So we got Osu, which we already mentioned, of course, awesome game. Finding new uses for your GameCube. What else are you supposed to do with it now that Zelda's been delayed until next summer? Okay, guys, okay, calm down. Everybody calm down. TV on UMD. It's funny in retrospect now, but it was funny back then too. Like, who was going to carry around a case of UMDs to watch on PSP? If you don't know, UMDs were the tiny discs that were made for the PSP, and companies started putting out like TV shows and movies on UMD, and it's like, are you really going to watch the Ali G show, on your PSP? Are you really going to watch Spider-Man on your PSP? Even if you are you really going to carry around a million UMDs? We got an ad here for The Suffering Ties That Bind. Kind of a corridor crawly shooter. Kind of unfair to call it a corridor crawly shooter because a lot of video game design back then was like that just because of the technical limitations. But this one was kind of spoopy. It had supernatural elements. It reviewed okay. It's got its fair share of fans. Let's move on. Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1. This was a offshoot Call of Duty game, not the mainline Infinity Ward ones. Well, at the time, mainline Infinity Ward ones. Of course, that would go on to change with the series having multiple mainline developers and things like that. But this was a, I guess, previous gen to the 360 gen, the PS2 era Call of Duty. And it was made by your folks and mine, Treyarch. So let's move on. We got coming soon. Lots of games coming out in 2005. 24 the game, if I remember right. Pretty sure I do for this one. This game ended up being like notoriously bad, like notoriously bad, to the point of where it became like a meme. Like even like video game reviewers were making funny video game reviews about it because of how bad it was. We got some Aeon Flux. We got Dragon Quest, of course, Harry Potter, Dynasty Warriors, Hack and Slash. We got Guitar Hero. Look at that. Ooh, my goodness, Guitar Hero. If you don't know Guitar Hero, I don't know what to tell you. No, it's one of those plastic instrument games, but it's not one of those. It's the plastic instrument game. Like, yeah, I prefer Rock Band, and Rock Band ended up being the better quality product in the long run. But Guitar Hero really kickstarted that whole genre, really revolutionized things. You know, you grab a plastic instrument, you play the notes on screen. It's a good time. And a lot of people also don't necessarily remember, but early on Guitar Hero, because it wasn't this big thing yet, it was actually covers of songs for a lot of it, not original recordings. So obviously it was cheaper to get covers than the OG songs. But we got the Matrix Path of Neo coming up as well. Matrix video games, they have their fans, but they never really took off in a major way. And The Matrix is my favorite movie. So I'm kind of bummed out that we haven't really gotten like an incredible Matrix video game, but there are some incredible Max Payne 2 mods, or maybe it was Max Payne 1. I think it's Max Payne 2. There are some incredible Matrix themed Max Payne 2 mods that were a lot of fun. What else we got in November, actually? So Crime Life, Gang Wars, and AI made that title. They had generative AI back then in 2005. We got a Jak X combat racing game. So if you remember Jak and Daxter, this was a combat racing game. Mario Kart DS. I like how Mario Kart DS goes on to become one of the most beloved Mario Karts, but it doesn't get like a screenshot entry. Need for Speed Most Wanted, of course. Huge Need for Speed. Shadow the Hedgehog, which nobody really was a fan of. We got a Ratchet game. We have a Ratchet game coming out, and we have a Jak X, or a Jak game coming out. Interesting at the same time. Of course, two different genres. This is more of a, I believe this was more of a standard Ratchet and Clank game, if I'm not mistaken. We got wrestling, Sims on consoles. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, Dungeon Siege 2, beloved RPG. People still talk about it to this day. And now we got, flashbang warning, delayed flashbang warning. Oh my gosh. Hold up, guys. Hold up. Give me a second here. We're gonna change this up a little bit. I got my lights on extra bright and everything because, you need to be able to see me, I guess. I don't know, but let's take a look at the Xbox 360 day one. So, what do we got here? Well, first we have an ad that we're going to skip because, damn it, another ad that we're going to skip because we want to get to the cover story. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dragon Quest, awesome series, love Dragon Quest, but, it's Dragon Quest. All right, what do we got here? Breaking down the deal. So, the Xbox 360, yeah, it came with a lot of peripherals and things. You had to spend a lot of money on that stuff. So, the core system was cheaper, but it didn't come with the hard drive. And it was, I'm not even going to say that. Like, I just, the language used on some of these things is just out there. Like, I know that magazine is not saying this themselves, but yeah. The core system didn't have the hard drive, and there was really a question at the time of like, dog, why are you splitting the hard drive? Like, are games going to not use the hard drive at all? Or are they going to definitely use the hard drive at all? And either way, like, neither way was good for the other way. Neither option was good for the other option, because if all games ended up using the hard drive, the core system was kind of useless, or not useless, but but if games didn't use the hard drive, then like, what's the point of having the hard drive when the hard drive can offer so much? So the hard drive ended up winning, and really the hard drive kind of just became mandatory pretty quickly, and then eventually I think it did become mandatory. It is what it is. It was sold to us as like consumer choice, but like, come on, guys, come on, let's be real. So of course, there's the iconic 360 controller, which was actually based off of an old Microsoft controller in its design. So it's interesting to see that evolve over time. I say iconic, and it really is iconic. It had that, the guide button that would bring up the system UI. It had a really fun layout. It had the world's worst D-pad, a completely useless D-pad. They had to redesign this controller so many times. This controller fell apart so many times. Like the bumpers would die, the D-pad would be unusable. Like the controllers went through so many builds and iterations, but despite all of that, absolutely iconic ass controller. We have the also iconic 360 headset here. This thing was butt cheeks. It was cheeks. The audio quality was terrible. Somebody always had their fan pointed at it in every freaking lobby that you played. And if they didn't have their fan pointed at it, they were calling you the worst slurs under the sun. But the 360 headset, it was a gateway into a new world. It was a gateway into a new era. And unfortunately, like, parties and Discord and things like that kind of like negated game chat in a lot of ways. But for this moment in time, like, game chat was bumping. Game chat was where you wanted to be, unless you were getting tired of all of the insults and the horrible people which were present and always will be in all like online capacity. But let's not dwell on that too much. There were plenty of amazing voice chat experiences you could have. It's just that, the negative experiences that you could have could be really negative, just like today on any voice chat anywhere. Had the play and charge kit here. We had a memory card, which, come on. These were doomed. 64 megabytes. Come on. And also just, memory cards had their time and place, but when you're going to introduce a 20 gig hard drive versus a 64 megabyte memory card, it's almost like, come on guys, you're just trying to hustle like people who don't know anybody. Play and charge kit was really big, but eventually the battery pack for the play and charge kit would die out permanently, so you had to stay play and charge. You had to stay charged the entire time. There was the networking adapter, which gave your Xbox basically like Wi-Fi capabilities. And of course, video cables, because it wasn't really clear at this point whether like HD was for reals or not, because a lot of people were like, can you even tell that it's HD? Like, can I even tell the difference? Like, what's it matter? And of course, now we know it made a huge difference. But, in the lead up to it, especially on old CRT TVs that were 4x3, didn't really make a difference. Oh, and then also early HD games were just crazy notorious for having like the world's tiniest text. Like excuse me, my eyes are falling apart. I remember playing Mass Effect 1 on a CRT 4x3, and like you just couldn't read the text on it because it was so tiny. Let's move on though. The blades. They're taking us through the menus here. Yes, though the blade system would end up getting completely redesigned, but the blades were just so iconic. They were colorful. They all took you to different sections of the system OS. You had your online blades, your system blades. You had your Xbox Live Arcade blades. They did not realize when they were launching this thing that they would have to redesign the entire UI because of how popular all of the online connectivity stuff was and how huge the online store would get. So RIP, the blade's gone but not forgotten. If you hit the guide on the Xbox 360, you get like a little nod to the blade still with the pop-up menu. But man, such iconic, colorful menus. We got an ad for True Crime here. I want to say that Lawrence Fishburne was in this game and a couple of other sort of A-list actors, but the game itself, it didn't live up to the potential that it could have had, I guess, or the potential that it did have, but it just didn't live up to that. No one really out there is asking for more of this. Just kind of ended up being a subpar GTA style game, which we had a lot of back then. We got some more blades here, and we got an ad for Fable: The Lost Chapters. I think this was like the Game of the Year edition style package of Fable, where there was like some cut content. Let's take a look. Let's see if I remember. It was coming to Windows. More lands to explore. Yeah, it was Fable with more content. Fable was a a Peter Molyneux game. Peter Molyneux, one of the, I guess, better known names in video game design, and it was kind of presented as, for every choice, a consequence. I think that was actually one of their taglines. So it was supposed to be like an RPG that every choice matters, the game world reacts to you, and like, yeah, there was a lot of that, but it wasn't kind of in the way that it was pitched. Like, it was in a very kind of like black and white. See what I did there? Some of you will see what I did there. It was in a black and white way, and it was in a it was a very binary way where, like, if you're evil, like, you're growing horns, things like that. It wasn't as subtle as like future games made moral choices or reactionary worlds. But of course, it was just playing with the limits of its time, but it was overhyped for sure. We got Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, not to be confused with Battlefield 2. This was a very consoleized take on Battlefield. There's plenty of people that enjoyed this take on Battlefield, but it wasn't really the fully fledged Battlefield experience that you might want. And if I remember right, one of the gimmicks for this game was that when you died, you could kind of like transport yourself into another soldier. Or I'm just having a fever dream and I made that up. All right, so 5 reasons you should buy a 360 on day one. You're addicted to Xbox Live. Ugh. Interesting way of putting it, because online console gaming at this point wasn't super huge. So saying you're addicted to Xbox Live, just kind of like an interesting way of phrasing it, I guess. I see what they're going for, though, because if you're excited for the Xbox 360 multiplayer potential and for what Xbox Live could become at this time, you're excited for the Xbox 360. Reason number 2, you're a graphics whore. Yeah. Okay, like, come on, guys. Every console's going to have better graphics than the previous one. Like, come on. It does other things. Yeah. Movies, music, etc., etc. You can play DVDs on it. There was an HD DVD attachment, all that stuff. It's a multimedia box, which is what all consoles basically became. I say all consoles, but I guess the Nintendo consoles are primarily still video game consoles, if we're being realistic about that. Reason number 4, you've got your own style. Faceplates didn't really take off for the 360. There was a bunch of them, but people didn't really care about them that much. You're a shopaholic. What they're trying to say here is like, there's an online marketplace here where you can buy like Xbox Live Arcade games. So like there's games you can buy digitally, download them. But you're a shopaholic. So I think in its extremely attitudey way, what this is trying to say is like, you're interested in the multiplayer potential, you're interested in like digital gaming and what that means, you're interested in an upgraded fidelity and graphics, and you want a multimedia box. Like, that's the nicer way of saying it. We got one of these super cringe inducing ads from Tag here, which is like an Axe style, deodorant, body spray, whatever it is, where, if you use this, girls are gonna like you. Hell yeah. Come on, guys. Let's move on. 5 reasons you should hold off on buying a 360. To avoid the pricey bundle deals, yeah. Stuff was expensive. Stuff was super expensive, People make fun of the PS3 for its infamous Ken Kutaragi, apologies, quote where he lists the price kind of into the camera deadpan. But yeah, the 360 was super expensive as well. You're not so sure about those day one games. So valid, right? A lot of platforms launch without that kind of day one amazingness, but the Xbox 360 ended up having an amazing launch library. So that didn't end up being an issue. You're not sure about that hard drive. Yeah, so you don't know if the hard drive was or wasn't going to take off. So, you kind of weren't sure about that potentially. So maybe you want to hold off, see how it goes. The graphics aren't advanced enough. So yeah, I mean, not that you should be buying consoles based off of how advanced the graphics are. I guess, it's a contributing factor. You want it to look good, but if you're just buying it for the graphics, come on. Like, what are you doing? But yeah, the early launch games, it's a transition period. They didn't look incredible. They looked better, but they didn't look like what 360 games would go on to look like. Now, here's the thing. Is this thing future-proof? Gigabit, Ethernet, Blu-ray high-definition DVD. Well, no, they're not DVDs. They're Blu-rays. ultra sharp 1080p resolution. If you techie types haven't passed out from your raging erection, you're probably wondering if the 360 will cry uncle when the PS3 blah 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 blah. They're trying to say that the PS3 is going to be more future proof. I think we know how that turned out. Obviously, Blu-ray won the format war, but Xbox 360 was kind of the premium multimedia machine, so that didn't really go out that way. Next up, we got the American Wasteland, Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. This is kind of when the Tony Hawk series started to go downhill, unfortunately. They just made so many Tony Hawks and made so many specific decisions that Tony Hawk fans weren't big fans of. So it is what it is. Like, American Wasteland was a fun game. It didn't change the franchise too much. It didn't set the world on fire. Take a shot. People liked it. You know, it's a Tony Hawk game. It's cool. It's got online. But this was kind of signaling sort of what Tony Hawk would go on to become, which is unfortunate, you know. We got an ad here for Soul Calibur 3. And I think maybe for the first time in my life, I'm realizing that Soul Calibur is written as one word. Did they change that? Let me know in the comments if they changed that later on, because I always thought it was 2 words, and I've always written it as 2 words. But Soul Calibur, of course, 3D fighting game with 3D movement. You know, very famous for its incredibly in-depth character creation. Very famous also just for, you know, being a good fighting game series. Next up, we got Xbox 360 games. So we're kind of looking at the launch games here, or launch era games. Perfect Dark Zero, number 1, best bet. So Perfect Dark Zero, it's fine. You know, it got some really great reviews at its when it came out, and it got some middling reviews when it came out. It was kind of like a really flashy shooter for its time, but when you actually played it, it kind of felt like you were playing more of a PS2 scope game. Like, even if you just analyze this screenshot here, like, when you're just glancing at this screenshot, it looks fantastic, right? But when you actually look at it up close, you know, the character model is not that high res or high fidelity. It's not high res because we're looking at a scan, but the environment, the actual playable environment, you're looking at it right here, right? That's a corridor. So that's kind of my beef with Perfect Dark Zero. It's kind of a PS2 scope and scale game masquerading as a 360 game. Of course, that's not to say it's not fun. I'm not pooping on it just, you know, to poop on it. It's a fun game. I played it. I had a good time playing it, but I just kind of like, you know, I played it and I forgot about it. That's all there is to it. We got an ad here for Need for Speed Most Wanted. Of course, one of the most beloved Need for Speeds. It's got, you know, all your classic Need for Speed isms. You know, you're running from the police, you're street racing, you got, you know, cool cars, you got, you know, that edginess and grit that sometimes is like silly, but maybe silly on purpose, that, you know, you want Need for Speed to have. Moving on, though, Project Gotham Racing 3. So we already talked about this one a lot, but boy, can I just say again, I love Project Gotham Racing. We got an iToy here ad. If you don't know what the iToy was, think of the Kinect, but for PlayStation 2, and even less fidelity than the Kinect. So it's a camera that basically tracks you, and what you do with your body informs how you're reacting in game or what's happening in game. iToy has a lot of defenders, weirdly enough, and there was quite a few iToy products, iToy games. Like, it's not terrible or anything. It's just kind of like Kinect, right? You know, what are you going to do with it? You know, there's not too many options that you can really do in terms of like making a super engaging video game specifically. You know, Kinect obviously had a second life in medical fields, and I don't know if it's still being used anywhere today, but yeah, it's weird to think that the Kinect had a legacy. Moving on now, we got an ad for Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. I really liked Advanced Warfighter 2. I played a lot of 1 as well. It was another one of those games where you can kind of even see it in the environments. Like, it's kind of barren, it's kind of empty. It's transitioning into that higher scope and scale of games that the 360 was known for, but it wasn't that exciting. Good game, but just not that exciting. But you do have a lot of fans of Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter GRA, because for a lot of people, it hit them at a time, at a right time and place, and like age-wise, where this was kind of one of their first looks at a next-gen game or what a next-gen shooter could look like. Folks, I am getting a low battery warning on my camera, even though it's not supposed to be happening at this point. Let's just proceed with the video without the camera. It's fine. You guys have seen what I look like. I'm not that exciting. So we're going to proceed without the camera. I'm going to be turning it off at some point here in the next moment or so. I'll have to look into what happened with the battery there. It was supposed to last for a lot longer. But let's move on. Let's move on without the camera. All right, so here we are, post-camera world. We got to look at Call of Duty 2. Interesting that it's placed as number 3 best launch bet, because Call of Duty 2 was spectacular. People really loved it. I am one of those sicko weirdos that actually preferred Call of Duty 1. I just thought Call of Duty 1's campaign was more like an action movie. It was more cinematic. And that's why I liked it. But of course, Call of Duty 2, along with the multiplayer, was really awesome. And, eventually it would give us Call of Duty 4, which would just completely change the game on shooters. We can talk about that another time. But Call of Duty 2, number 3, launch best bet. So number 4 is Oblivion, which is hilarious because November 2005, yeah, right. I think it came out in March 2006. And it was never going to be a launch game. But it's funny to see Oblivion at number 4 because Oblivion just ended up becoming such an iconic Elder Scrolls game and just an iconic game, period. People to this day will still talk about Oblivion. Sometimes they'll be like, Oblivion did this better than Skyrim, or Oblivion did this better than this other game. Oblivion, wow, what a game Oblivion was. I would say it heralded in a new era of RPGs for sure. Ooh, we got an ad here for Age of Empires 3. And Age of Empires 3 was a good game, but it turns out Age of Empires fans really just want to keep playing 2. Even with the new Age of Empires, what's it called? The definitive edition of Age of Empires 3 is kind of where people are at with that. Next up, we got Dead or Alive 4, which I don't remember if it was a launch game. I'm pretty sure it wasn't in the end. I could be misremembering, but Dead or Alive, of course, the fighting game franchise that is famous for its appealing graphics and physics. Really good physics in Dead or Alive 4. Just all of Dead or Alive has really revolutionary physics. Condemned: Criminal Origins. My gosh, Condemned ended up being one of those sleeper hits. It even got a sequel. It's a very spoopy game, very atmospheric, first person. It's I would call it psychological horror. I have really fond memories of watching people play Condemned because I am a baby and I don't like to be scared by video games. Of course, we got Gun here again. We got Peter Jackson's King Kong. Bound for 360. These titles don't have a date yet, but Halo 3, yep, it happened. A Splinter Cell game happened. Fable happened. Forza. Did Rygar happen? Shadowrun eventually happened. Mercenaries happened. True Fantasy Live Online. I have no memory of this, unfortunately. And then we have Marvel RPG, which I'm not sure which game this is referring to be honest. Maybe Ultimate Alliance, but it says Microsoft. What Marvel RPG was made by Microsoft? Huh. Let me know in the comments below if you know what that's talking about, because I'm drawing a blank here. Ooh, Brothers in Arms, Earned in Blood. Brothers in Arms was a beloved first-person shooter series made by Gearbox, World War II themed, and it was very sort of opposite of Call of Duty or Medal of Honor. Instead of going for that extremely cinematic action movie gameplay style, it was much more of a tactical shooter. You had, they're even advertising it here, dynamic AI or whatever. You had to really kind of plan your moves out. You had to think more. It wasn't just kind of go to the waypoint and shoot guys and then go on to the next waypoint. Need for Speed Most Wanted, of course. Frame City Killer. So Frame City Killer, it got canceled. It didn't ever come out. It was just an interesting, it was an interesting thing where you kind of look at this and you're like, that's a next gen game. And actually, they even say, if this is next gen here, we want no part of it. Sure. Hair in video games is always tough. But yeah, this game, it never came out. Weird that it has kind of a Metal Gear UI there. But it would have been really interesting to see what this game could have become, because yeah, I know you never really want to see a game canceled, to be honest, right? Big in 2006, so 99 Nights was like a Dynasty Warrior was a Dynasty Warrior style hack and slash game. Didn't really, set the world on fire. We got Saints Row here, which of course spawned many games and ended up being a beloved series until it wasn't, unfortunately. Full Auto, just think of it like a Twisted Metal style game. Of course, we got Gra, and we got Gears of War, which was is one of the most influential shooters ever made for third-person shooters and cover-based shooters specifically. We'll be talking about Gears much more in future videos. Don't you worry about that. Next up, we've got an ad for Genji here that starts on this page. I never played this version of Genji, or this iteration. It's just one of those, like you run around, hack and slash, beat up people and bosses. There's people that really liked it. There's people that didn't really care about it. But Genji was famous for the giant enemy crab meme that you might remember from the PS3 era, where they sort of talked about like historical battles happening in this game. And then they were like, here we have a giant enemy crab. Unfortunate moment for them, but thank you for that moment, because it gave us so many laughs over the years. We got to look at Cameo over here. Quake 4, which I was personally super stoked about, but unfortunately it didn't kind of meet the bar that previous Quake games met, and it wasn't the most interesting take on Quake, to be quite honest. And of course we got Tony Hawk's American Skateland, or Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. Why am I just dying over here? We have a full spread here for NFL 06. Of course, it was mentioned on the cover. I don't think we necessarily need to talk too much about Madden. It was the start of next gen for sports, and the 360 had a bunch of sports games, and that's all there is to it. And I say that as I actually work on a sports game, but Madden 06 was kind of the era where game companies were really like, check out our sweat tech. I think it was more for the NBA stuff than Madden specifically, but I'm just mentioning this is that era where it was like, yo, we got next gen sweat, let's effing go. GTA Liberty City Stories coming fall to PSP. Ooh, everyone was like, what? GTA is going to be coming to PSP? And yeah, it did. And you had full-on GTA experiences. You also had, I think it was called Chinatown Wars, which was more of the classic GTA isometric style. But Liberty City Stories was like a quote-unquote proper GTA, behind the back, all that stuff. People really enjoyed it on PSP. I personally, PSP had one analog stick, right? So, it's tough. But for the people that really enjoyed it, that's great. For me, I was kind of like, I can get this experience elsewhere in a better way. Now, we got some more true crime here. EB, or GameStop as you might know them. Then we move on to Amped, of course, or actually just sports in general. Apologies. So we got Amped here. So not pictured, impressive next generation graphics. Like, okay, bro, we get it. Geez. Tiger Woods, Top Spin 2. I love the Top Spin series. Top Spin 4, one of the best sports games of all time. At the time of recording of this, Top Spin 2K25 came out, and it's got its fair share of issues, but I think the core of the game is there, and I hope they build on that. Got Wick, we got Mutant Storm Reloaded, Hexic on Xbox Live Arcade. Man, the Xbox Live Arcade, that went on to really change the game. So many amazing smaller scale games came out on Xbox Live Arcade. With this generation of consoles, it was kind of the death of the AA game. You really had AAA gaming, big expensive gaming, and the AA game was kind of going away, where it was kind of like mid-budget, mid-scale, mid-scope. But Xbox Live Arcade offered these smaller experiences that were oftentimes amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were plenty of smaller bad games as well, but Geometry Wars 2 is the actual killer app on Xbox. Geometry Wars Retro Evolved 2 is the actual killer app on the Xbox 360. It was on the Xbox Live Arcade. I forget if it was $10 or $15, and it was just an amazing game. Here I am just ranting about that game now. So anyway, We got Game Crazy ad. We got a giveaway here, and we got another ad by Axe this time about how dirty boys get clean. Far Cry Instincts. We're not gonna go too ham on this. This is kind of like a strategy preview. It's more of just an ad. I mean, you can always make the case like magazines are just ads in a way, but like this is an actual ad. But Far Cry Instincts, it was a console version of Far Cry. Far Cry was a different style of like big open shooter than what it is these days. But yeah, Far Cry Instincts, it had its fair share of fans, and it reviewed decently. But it wasn't one of those games that kind of like changed the game or anything like that. Next up, we're gonna not spend too much time on reviews. I say now, but then watch it be 4 hours because, reviews are reviews. You can always just look up other reviews of games and things like that. It's more interesting just to see how EGM crew kind of saw things. So the game of the month was the Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, which, did I call that a PS2 3D game before? No, I don't think I did. This is the DS one. So anyway, we got Shaolin Monks Mortal Kombat, which was a fun kind of beat 'em up take on a Mortal Kombat. One of those games that, it knew what it was. It didn't need to be anything greater than that. It was a lot of fun. We also got Indigo Prophecy here, or it's known as Fahrenheit in other regions. And this is from Quantic Dreams, or Quantic Dream, the guys that made like Heavy Rain and those games. And this is kind of like a precursor to that. Very cinematic, very like mind screwy, very kind of like attempting to be mature. Now, whether you feel like Quantic Game Dreams are mature or not, that's up for you to decide. But it's what it's going for. That's kind of like the vibe, especially for the era that it's in with Indigo Prophecy. Getting great reviews here, and Indigo Prophecy in general is just really beloved. We got an Evil Dead game that didn't do so hot, and an ad for wireless controllers that were becoming all of the rage. Fun to see. NBA 2K6. I was going to say 2K26, but no, 2K6. NBA Live 06, and then March Madness as well. And oh my gosh, game screens. These always looked so dope. I saw one in the wild, and it looked so cool. I never had one of these. And, now as, like an adult, well into my adult years, approaching middle age, if anything, I realized, like, what the hell would I have done with one of these? But I really wanted these. They were so cool. Yeah, I'm totally going to carry my 360 around. Yeah, like, where am I going to plug it in? Like, what? Okay. I might have to censor this just for YouTube and how they do their stuff. But this is an ad here for Condemned Criminal Origins, which we briefly touched on, and it shows a mannequin that has been broken, let's say. So, moving on. We got an ad, review for Burnout Revenge, which is Burnout 4, I guess, if we go by the numbers, if I remember it right. Burnout Revenge, I really love Burnout Revenge, especially on 360 with the online stuff. The Burnout community can often be split between, like, do we like Burnout 4 or Burnout Revenge or Burnout 3 more? Because there were some changes to things like traffic checking and modes and things like that, but both Burnouts are really fun. God, I wish Burnout was still around. What an incredible franchise and series of games. And of course, Burnout Paradise, which ended up being like the main 360 Burnout, went on to revolutionize open world racing. But there's no crying to mommy when you lose. World Series of Poker. For when you need poker on your console. Yeah. Like, who's playing poker on their PS2 or Xbox? I guess, there's if it does have online, then yeah, okay, a poker game that's online. All right. Maybe I shouldn't judge immediately. That's on me. That's on me. My bad. Next up, we have an ad for, I've never said this out loud, Radiata Stories, which I believe was an action RPG. I'm not too familiar with it, to be honest with you. Hopefully there's footage of it playing so you can at least see what it looks like. But I believe it was an action RPG that had a huge cast of characters. I mean, they're already advertising over 175, but I don't know that much more about it, unfortunately. It's a square joint, though. Moving on. Spartan Total Warrior scores kind of represents what we talked about when we saw the ad. Some people really loved it. Some people are like, it's fine. We got Marvel Nemesis, which was a I hesitate to call it a fighting game because it's one of those like, you know how people say Smash Bros is a platform fighter, not a fighter fighter? I don't want to get into those arguments because they're kind of silly, but if we're making a distinction about like a traditional old school type fighting game, like Marvel Nemesis was not one of those, but really interesting to see that it got a 7.5 here from James. It got, lower scores elsewhere. And this game in general was seen as kind of really poor. It could have been amazing because on paper, a Marvel fighter, even if it's more of like a brawler or an arena fighter or whatever like subcategory of fighter you want to call it, that would have been awesome. But yeah, it just it didn't come out in a way, or it didn't achieve the quality that people would have wanted out of that. Here we have an ad for Battalion Wars, which was one of my big disappointments, to be quite honest with you, on the GameCube. So Battalion Wars is kind of like it's not Advance Wars, but it's kind of like a spiritual continuation of Advance Wars. And on the GameCube, it was an RTS third-person shooter hybrid, but it wasn't really amazing at either of those things. So, I had really high hopes for this game, and I thought it would be a lot of fun, but it just didn't tickle me on the strategy side and on the shooting side. Like it didn't go deep enough or engaging enough on either, but it reviewed okay, and there's people that like it. I wish I liked it more, and I wish that Battalion Wars went on to become like a big series, but it's not really the case. We got The Suffering, we got Tiger Woods, we got an ad for Trauma Center, which is sort of a very beloved by most circles operation game on the DS. Made good use of the touchscreen. I think this game has you drawing pentagrams as well, which is kind of fun to think about. Shadow of the Colossus. Oh, Shadow of the Colossus. What a game. What a frame rate. But yeah, getting amazing scores here. Got amazing scores everywhere. Shadow of the Colossus is like, when people talk about top 50 games of all time, Shadow of the Colossus is always going to be on that list. It is I don't even know what you would call it, like a cinematic action adventure game. It kind of ushered in, or it didn't usher in, it created climbing. You know how like all basically open world games these days have climbing in them? Well, Shadow of the Colossus was like ahead of that curve where you could scale these giant monsters, creatures. And if you haven't played Shadow of the Colossus, there's the 2018 remaster, remake, whatever you want to call it. That's a good spot to play that. The original PS2 version, the controls can be PS2y and the frame rate can be pretty, but yeah, Shadow of the Colossus. Wow, what a cinematic, thoughtful, and engaging experience. Love it. We got a Shin Megami Tensei game here, Digital Devil Saga 2. Of course, Shin Megami Tensei was always a reasonably popular series, but it exploded with its spin-off. You might have heard of it. It's called Persona. Next up, We Love Katamari. Great reviews. Katamari continues to be a series that is near and dear to my heart. Not because I necessarily love playing it. Like, it's fun. It's fun to play. You roll things up into a ball, and it's like, how many times can I really do that? But I love its personality. I love the quirkiness. I love the humor. I love how it looks, the style, the vibe, the comedy, the everything. It hard carries it. When you play Katamari, you're going to smile or you're going to go like, what the fuck? But both of those things, you're going to do it in a fun and positive way. We got a Genji review, which we talked about a little bit. We got Sly 3. Ooh, interesting that Sly Cooper 3 is getting like no fanfare. It just gets like a couple of paragraphs here. Maybe previous issues like had it, or maybe a different magazine had an exclusive or something. But Sly Cooper, it's coming at you from the guys that went on to make the... why am I blanking on the games now? Oh my gosh. No. No, why am I blanking on their famous open world games? No. Oh man. I'm blanking on the name. I'm sorry. You let me know in the comments below what it's freaking called. Infamous. So before that, they were making Sly 3, which was, you can call it like an action-adventure platformer with a really cool cel-shaded-y style here. this era of video games, cell shadedness wasn't so like readily accepted. A lot of people were like, "Ooh, it's for kids," you know, the famous or infamous Wind Waker reactions where people were like, "Oh, they made a Zelda for kids," as opposed to all those other Zeldas that, you know, could not be enjoyed by children before. But Sly 3, great game. It just kind of continues to do more of what Sly does, which is, you know, action, adventure, platforming, and stealth as well. Very fun game for its time. Don't know how it's aged now, to be honest. Some of these like action, adventure, platformer style games are hard to go back to. We also got Devil Kings in here, which I'm going to be honest with you, I have zero memory of this game ever existing. So if you're a Devil Kings fan or know something about it, let me know. Let's move on. Yep, let's move on. Be legendary or be predatory? Oh, God. I don't know, guys. It just kind of like, I know what, obviously they're talking about Venom, but like be predatory as a choice, like who? I don't know. I don't think they would have made this ad today. It just kind of, you know, it hits certain vibes that you don't want to hit or associate with. Next up, we got Far Cry Instincts, which is kind of interesting always to see when you have like a big advertisement spread. And then it's like 8.8, 6.5. It's like, are you trying to say the real score is like 7? Which actually, I think like if you were to Metacritic this, I think most of the scores were in the 7s. But yeah, you know, the magazine game industry thing of like ads versus reviews and things like that always had some gray areas in some spots. And all of media continues to have those gray areas in general. We got an ad here for Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Battalion Wars review. They're kind of echoing kind of how I feel about it. Like, it's not a bad game, but, you know, 6s, 7s. Yeah, I would probably rate it. I like to rate it on a 5-star scale with no half stars. So I would probably give Battalion Wars a 3. Like, it's fine, but it didn't capture my imagination really. But even they actually couldn't resist to talk about Advance Wars. Burnout Legends, which was a PSP Burnout. Gosh, I love Burnout Legends. It was just, you got the full Burnout experience on the go. And it had like multiplayer and stuff. My goodness, so much fun. Love that Burnout. Virtua Tennis, of course. PSP edition. And here's some more like weird video game writing stuff. Good, bad, bargain. Only $10,000 to have Sharapova as a double partners. Well, like, come on, what? Perv and volley, and then they talk about their like their legs, like their gams, like come on, guy, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? No one, I assure you, no one who is into tennis cares about these leg pixels. You know what? I take that back. There's one person that cares. It is what it is, you know. We got SanDisk here advertising some SD cards. Wow, 1 whole gigabyte. That's crazy. And we had the PSP style Memory Stick Pro Duo format that no one really liked, to be honest. Madden reviews for the PSP. And then I've never said this out loud. Popo Lacroix. Popo Lacroix. Popo Lacroix. Popo Lacroix. That's how I'm going to call this one. I think it was a collection of PS1 games that they brought over to PSP, if I'm not mistaken. We got a cool case here for the PSP. It's got speakers, dog. Let's fucking go. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, like we mentioned before, game of the month. And just a really great Castlevania. There's so many amazing Castlevania 2D games that are just incredible. And if you've never played a Castlevania, the best way I can describe it to you is actually, in a weird way, Castlevania is Dark Souls or Demon Souls or Elden Ring, but 2D. And I know that's a really weird way to explain it, but if you've not played Castlevania, if I tell you that it's a Metroidvania, that doesn't mean anything to you. But Castlevania basically, like, along with Metroid, invented its own genre. And really, the modern kind of Souls-style games are heavily inspired by Castlevania. And you can see its DNA in those games quite a bit, which is really cool. Another ad for Gun here, or I guess EB specifically. Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. I'm gonna fight these people. What is it? Andrew, you're cool. Jennifer, Shane, we're gonna fight. Like, what? This is like, everyone loves Phoenix, right? What's not to like? What's not to like? I guess maybe because like they expected more out of like a DS outing for a Phoenix, right? I could see that. But in terms of like story, in terms of like writing, it's great. Also, EGM didn't seem to like Trauma Center, which is kind of against the grain of like the popular consensus. Well, it's totally fine, you know, different opinions. But yeah, Robert, Kathleen, Christian, we're absolutely gonna fight. We're gonna fight a lot. Heroes of the Pacific, join the great pilots of the Pacific. One of those playing games that we don't really get anymore these days. So I believe it was calling itself as more of a sim back in the day. I never played this one myself. Wait, no, I did play it myself. Yeah, I did play it. Okay. I did play it and I totally forgot. I wouldn't really call it a sim, but maybe for its era, it was more simmy. I don't know. But yeah, we don't really get just kind of like playing games anymore. That genre really fell off, which is unfortunate. Shout out to that last Ace Combat that they did. It was a lot of fun. Now then, we got Lost in Blue on DS, which was kind of a survival game. Not survival in the base building sense, but more in the like survive in the wilderness sense. We got Lunar. Lunar is a blind spot for me that I want to research more after this, but I think the Lunar series is really beloved, but this one, not so much. And then we got, so just, here's something that's really interesting. Like, this is kind of like the last hurrah for video game magazines, right? Like they would basically die during the 360 era because the internet became the way to consume information about video games. So we got reviews here and things that like didn't make the print time for this, but ended up on their website, which was oneup.com. So Ninja Gaiden Black, people love Ninja Gaiden, people love this game, and it's kind of weird that you have it coming out and like you don't have a review for it in the magazine. But you know, it was that transition period to the internet. It was a transition for both video games and for video game journalism, if you want to call it journalism, video game magazines. Of course, Marvel Nemesis is mentioned again as well. We got some looks at some classics here. We got an iToy game, a DDR game, reviews archives. Oh, an ad from Fatality branded computer gear. If you don't know Fatality, he was probably, or maybe still is, generally regarded as like the most famous pro gamer. I don't know how it is these days, and you know, there's so many people that get so famous through like Twitch streaming and esports events. And I'm not saying that's bad or anything. Don't get me wrong, that's like cool. But Fatality was definitely like, if you knew a little bit about pro gaming, like Fatality was the household name. I haven't really kept up with Fatality and what he does these days. I'm sure he still plays video games and things like that. So I'll check that out after. But yeah, household name. Game Over. So this is like a column where they just like play bad games and like talk smack. And they decided to play That's So Raven 2. And yeah, this column is just like, you know, you're trying to be funny. You're trying to be like internet trolly, internet humory. It's not my thing. And then also like, you know, different era, obviously, but like, you know, let's just move on. We got an ad for D&D. Ooh. Crossword puzzle. Okay. No, I'm not. No. I can't subject you to that, guys. Like I would love to do the crossword right now in front of you and have you scream at the TV while I like don't get the words right or whatever. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to just take a look at it though. I love crosswords. Okay. What do we got? DJ Street Fighter Homeland. That's Jamaica. Castlevania Power Up. I have to check, but I'm just seeing if there's, okay, PSP Media, UMD. I'm just seeing if there's anything we can like guess just from the text. Chrono Cross Protagonist. I should know this, but I'm forgetting. Forza Leftover. What? Anyway, let's not bore you with the crossword, but definitely going to do this on my own time after. Does your phone pop though? It could pop with these games. All right. We got a retrospective on the PS1 here, which is really fun to see. So, PS1 was originally going to be a Nintendo and Sony joint for the Super Nintendo, the Super Nintendo. It was going to be basically like an add-on or its own kind of device, but it was going to be the Super Nintendo CD-ROM. And there was a lot of fallout, a lot of drama between Nintendo and Sony at this time, stemming from licensing and how they communicated to the media and things like that. It's way too much drama to unpack in this already like super long video, but basically Sony and Nintendo would beef over how much money they were making. It always comes down to money, right? So in the end, Sony was like, screw it, we're gonna do it ourselves. And yeah, absolutely iconic platform, iconic series of consoles. Every PlayStation is someone's favorite console. Well, you know, we're too early in the PS5 cycle for somebody to maybe say that. Let's be real. Actually, we're not early on in the PS5 cycle. We're like halfway through it, maybe even more halfway, if we go by traditional console cycles. So I think that's a topic for another day. Just like the current generation of consoles is maybe not receiving as many games as you would have hoped. But either way, PlayStation 1, amazing platform. This is the OG PlayStation. Of course, they made a PS1, which is like a slim version of it as well. That's the one that I had eventually. But gosh, PS1, Final Fantasy, Tomb Raider, Crash, you know, Tony Hawk was synonymous with PlayStation. So much good stuff. Love the PS1. And it turned 10 in 2005. So, what else we got here? Okay, so some more winning stuff, some more PS1 stuff. We got final word, out with the old and with the 360. So we're getting to the end of the issue here. Let's see what the folks are saying about the 360. The folks being the folks that work at EGM. So Dan Shu is saying, what's on your mind? What's on your mind? Yeah, he's saying, okay, I want one too. Well, let's check out what Crispin said first. I want one, of course, but not because of the games. Not much in the launch window lineup is excited. It has me excited. Okay. Am I crazy and misremembering the 360 launch lineup? Give me a sec. I'm gonna pull it out. I don't want to show you my browser though. You know what? I don't think I use Edge ever. Let's use Edge. Alrighty. There's no personal information here, right? I'm just looking at the screen. No, there isn't. Okay. Xbox 360 launch games wiki. Oh my god, Bing. Is it? Yeah, it's Bing. Alright, so for the main quote-unquote launch, North America and Europe, Amped, Call of Duty, Condemned, Gun, Cameo, NFL, NBA, NHL, King Kong, PGR. What the hell? This is a great launch. I don't know. It's a great launch. I guess, you know, you could maybe in the lead up to it, maybe it like didn't look like it was going to be as good as it was because there were a lot of question marks around the Xbox, but no, this is a fantastic launch considering what some other consoles launch with. Let's be honest here. And while we're here, North America, best-selling title was Call of Duty 2 with an attach rate of 77%. Dog, that's crazy. That means 77% of people that bought a 360 in this kind of launch window, however it's defined, bought Call of Duty 2. That's awesome. You love to see it. Call of Duty 2, what a great game. So anyway, Crispin is more interested in the multimedia aspect of it. Dan is interested in the multiplayer aspect of it. There's, you know, talk about the different SKUs here, which we talked about, you know, like why were there two SKUs? No good real reason why. Games, Crispin is most excited for Oblivion. It's got a unicorn and you can kill it. You might be able to eat it. And Dan's excited for Perfect Dark Zero. Dan is like, he kind of goes back and forth in this issue about like, yeah, I love Perfect Dark Zero, but also I recognize it's maybe not going to be that good. So interesting because like Perfect Dark Zero, like it kind of ended up being that, right? Like it was a good game, but it wasn't the system seller or maybe the like quote unquote killer app that people used to call that everybody wanted it to be. But you know, it is what it is. Next month, PS3 is almost here. And then there's the answers to the thingy here. I'm not going to look at that, but that's going to bring us to a close for EGM specifically. Thank you to Retro Mags for making sure we are able to look at these old magazine issues that aren't in print anymore. I appreciate Retro Mags a lot. Check out their website. This isn't like a sponsorship or anything like that. I just really love Retro Mags. I love going through old magazines. I'm a weirdo like that. But that's the lay of the land. So on the eve, or not the eve, but like right before the 360 was about to start revolutionizing the industry slowly, this is what video games looked like from EGM. Now, let's take a quick coffee break, and then we'll take a look at GamePro. And because obviously they're covering the same period, you'll end up seeing a lot of like similar games covered. So we're going to make our way through GamePro much quicker than we did through EGM. Not because like, you know, we don't like GamePro or anything like that, just because I don't want to, you know, repeat myself or show the same videos or whatever the case may be. So let's take a quick coffee break. And in the meantime, or not in the meantime, what am I even saying anymore? Coffee break and then GamePro. Let's go. All right, gamers, coffee break is over. Nobody else will ever drink coffee again. I drank the last one. We got GamePro here now, November issue 2005. Over 3 million readers each month. Do they mean the website? Do they mean the magazine? Probably the website, right? But either way, we got Saints Row on the cover. We got Xbox 360 kicking our ass. Yeah! We're going to get our souls reaped, and we're going to take a look at some classics. So, Saints Row, is this the Grand Theft Auto killer? And you've heard me say Halo killer or killer app a couple of times. I don't really love those terms, to be honest, but it's just kind of the vernacular of this era. Everything was kind of seen as killer of something else or the other. It was just the shorthand way that the media was describing, like, hey, we think Saints Row is going to be really good, and it's going to stand up to Grand Theft Auto in terms of quality. So we gotta present it as a killer thing, and it's that kind of like I don't know what you want to call it, like accidental tribalism, or maybe even on purpose tribalism that fuels a lot of console wars and things like that, which I just have zero patience or time for. But it is what it is. You know, it's the era that we're in, and let's take a look at this cover. So. Of course, it's got to be a girl with a gun. And then, I don't know, this cover really does not... I see what they're going for, but this cover to me is the early 2000s kind of in a nutshell. You're seeing some attempts at like really good graphic design and compositioning and something along those lines, but it's just a little bit earnest or naive. It's not quite hitting what it's trying to hit. Like, when you're looking at, you know, the, whoa, why is the EGM? Whoa, what did I just do? I didn't even know that was a, stop that. I didn't even know that was a thing. Let's get back to GamePro. But yeah, I think I was going to talk about like, you know, how you have little, like, very clear cropping, or cutting out, and then the Photoshop glow, things like that. They just really stand out to me. But, you know, I'm not one to talk. I'm no graphic designer myself. I'm just talking about visually. It looks like it's dated. It's from a very specific era, but also at the same time, you know, graphic design standards and what's cool and what's not cool change all the time. We looked at these covers for EGM that were considered bad earlier, and I quite liked a lot of them just because, you know, they don't look stylish or hip by current standards, but they're fun retro throwbacks. So I can totally see somebody being nostalgic for this cover. You know, you got the tough guy with the gun. You got the neon logo of GamePro. Let's move on though. That's why am I talking so much about the cover? Ooh, we got WW, I guess E by now. Yeah, E, Age or Day of Reckoning 2 for GameCube. This is a wrestling game that's a bit different than your typical wrestling games. It's got a very specific story that kind of hits a lot of different beats that are different than your typical potential wrestling game storylines. Not every wrestling game has a story either, right? So this was a really interesting one. It didn't get the world's most amazing reviews. It didn't get bad ones either. But fans that are really into wrestling games, they tend to like Day of Reckoning because it offered something a little bit different than your standard WWE fare at the time. Now we got some Shadow of the Colossus here. Let's just move on so that we're not repeating ourselves. X-Men Legends 2. God, I love it. Let's see. What do we got here? What do we got here? Ooh, introducing the next big thing in video game strategy guides. Wiki Strats. gamerhelp.com/wiki. I'm gonna guess this URL is now defunct, but I'm not gonna go check in case something fishy pops up on screen. I'll check later in my own time. But yeah, this did end up being the next big thing. Wiki guides or wiki style guides. It totally kind of took over. It just didn't necessarily take over right away in 2005. Over on the next page, we have our kind of table of contents situation. So I think with GamePro and how it looks when we're looking at it scanned and digitally, some of the paging is going to be a little bit funky, maybe early on and late on in the magazine, but this is the best view that we have. Otherwise, it would be even more funky the way we're looking at it. So, it's not a big deal. We can just move on. Here, some more table of contents action. And, nice little ad for Matrix Path of Neo. Like I said before, Matrix, my favorite movie, but gosh, what I would do for a really great Matrix game. I haven't played Sifu yet. Sifu, it has some really cool looking Matrix mods. I want to check that out at some point. But yeah, Matrix Path of Neo, it's all right. It's all right. We got some sort of letters here from the, from the readers. I'm not going to read all of this one right now, but basically it talks about from Fernando Garcia, basically talks about how we should treat women better in video games and treat them, just like the people that they are, as opposed to, how especially older video games tended to treat women in more hypersexualized ways and objectifying ways and more as accessories than actual characters and people. So it's interesting to see this conversation is happening in 2005, right? Because to some extent, we see this conversation still happening today in 2024. I imagine we'll be seeing this conversation happening still for many years to come, unfortunately. But yeah, the way that women were presented in video games, especially in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, it wasn't great. People will always, some people rather, I should say, will always quickly jump and be like, well, what about this badass? Or what about this character that's a woman and happens to be awesome? And like, yeah, those examples exist and those examples are valid. But by and large, the gaming had a lot of growing up to do in 2005. And in many ways, gaming has grown up quite a bit by now. And there's still always room to grow. But sometimes certain pockets of the gaming audience haven't quite grown up. Or maybe it's an influx of younger people. It's just a generational thing. But look, this is the type of topic that I know gets a lot of people very angry for no good reason, and I don't need that in the comments. So let's just move on. We can say this as a topic for another video, another time, to give it the attention that it kind of deserves. But let's move on here. So we got a reader review, which is kind of fun. Destroy All Humans review. The person that reviewed it, what is it? Aryak13. They enjoyed it quite a bit. 4.5 fun out of 5. That's always fun when you see magazines publish kind of something a reader sends, and I always enjoyed that. We got an ad here for A Nightmare Before Christmas game that I love it when I see this stuff. We don't really get this anymore so much, but you see it, PlayStation, Xbox, Game Boy Advance too. Sometimes games that were console games and then got ported over to GBA, they ended up being bangers, like Tony Hawk on Game Boy Advance. Ooh, I don't know how they did it, but it's awesome. And next up, we got some more letters here. We don't necessarily need to read all of them, but you know what? This catches my eye. Oops, Pro. Also, actually, this catches my eye too. No, you know what? I lied. We got to read some of these. All right. My friends and I have been playing video games our whole lives, and I feel like GamePro is the best video game magazine out there. Blah, blah, blah. I appreciate it. I hope you can blah, blah, blah. Can you send me free stuff? No. All right. I can get behind that. Let's see what else we got. Oops, Pro. Tiger proofing will not be a feature in the next gen version of Tiger Woods. Reactive tiger proofing, something, feature, this and that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's like, I guess like a correction, I guess. Let's move on. Wait, before we move on, does anyone else just want to drink a Mountain Dew right now. I can't explain why. This video is not brought to you by Mountain Dew. All right, so as you can tell already, GamePro, their style of magazine, at least for this issue, they're focusing a lot more on features and maybe a little bit more culture, whereas EGM focuses more on direct product coverage, at least for these specific issues. So, here we have a buyer's beware section where people are talking about technical issues with gaming stuff, gaming hardware. We got a little Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 4 on PS2 thing. So this trips me out to this day, right? Because I always think of RE4 as a GameCube game, but of course it eventually made its way to PS2 and other platforms. But just seeing that box art always trips me out. I'm like, huh. They like it just. It's like a fight or flight response in my brain where it's hitting fight, and I'm like, no, that's not the cover. I need to fight it. But yeah, this is talking about some of the kind of tips for weapons in RE4. Now let's move on. We got top 10 best video game franchises. Oh boy! So video game. Number 2 is Mario, developed by Nintendo. Let's see what we got here. Number 10 is Bomberman. Number 9 is Castlevania, then Street Fighter, Metal Gear, Doom, Resident Evil, Metroid, Final Fantasy, Mario. That is an interesting list. I think that if anyone who kind of appreciates games as a medium and as an art form and has like a long view on it, I think anyone would have a lot of these franchises in their lists if they're kind of looking at it from the academic perspective. But what really stands out to me is like Bomberman. Bomberman's a classic, absolutely. But is it like when you think of the best franchises in video games, are you really thinking about Bomberman? Anyway, that's just my opinion. I love Bomberman. And of course, everyone's list is going to be different. Everyone's going to have different opinions. For somebody else, Call of Duty would be on this list. Of course, in 2005, there weren't that many Call of Duty games, so you couldn't really, it would be hard for it to compete with some of these giants. I'm going to guess that number 1 is going to be Zelda, because Zelda's not on this list at all. And especially in 2005, Mario and Zelda were generally regarded as the best franchises in video games. And you can absolutely make the case that that is still the situation today. I know Mario Odyssey, for me personally, was like, I don't want to like oversell it, but for me personally, it was one of the greatest games I've ever played. And then Breath of the Wild it's taking a lot from other video games that came before it, but it's also putting its own spin on it, and it's kind of reinventing Zelda, and it's giving that open world Zelda experience to a generation of players that maybe haven't had those types of open world experiences before, and it's doing it at such a high quality. So yeah, just thinking about it from that perspective, those two franchises continue to be absolute powerhouses and just setting the bar for what video game quality can be. Alrighty, so 10 games that didn't meet the hype. All right. Daikatana, absolutely, 100%. Absolutely true. I don't think you would find anyone, well, you'll find someone. I don't think you would find many sane people who would disagree here. So Daikatana was a game that was marketed as like John Romero will make you his bitch, because like, oh, Daikatana, so tough, so edgy. Huh. And if you don't know John Romero, he's one of the fathers of Doom. So he's a legendary kind of game industry icon, and Daikatana coming from him was seen as a big deal. And yeah, it came out and it was whatever, it definitely wasn't worth the insane kind of hype or aggressive marketing that they pushed for it. Enter the Matrix, I don't know that anyone was really thinking this game was going to blow the roof off of the industry. Kind of same goes for Angel of Darkness. This list, everyone has different opinions. They're entitled to it. It's all good. But yeah, Max Payne 2 as the 10th most what is it, disappointing, or yeah, didn't meet the hype game. What? What are we doing? Max Payne 2 is great. Like, what? Did we play the same Max Payne? The Max Payne that I played was on PC, so I think it came out on Xbox at some point, at least Xbox, maybe on PS2 as well. I don't know. So I don't know if those versions are different in any way, but Max Payne 2 is awesome. Neither Max Payne 1 or 2 are perfect, but really fun games and great mod scene as well. Obviously, mod scene wouldn't really factor into something like this, but oh yeah, it did come out on the consoles. Yeah, it's right there. I'm blind. Yeah, I strongly disagree with Max Payne 2, but I'm interested in hearing your guys' thoughts in the comments. Let me know, what were some games that absolutely flopped for you in terms of like you were really excited for them and then they just didn't live up to it. We got another grip shift ad here, different one than what we saw in EGM. And then here's that same ad again. And then we have a kind of article, sponsored content thing. Let's just take a look at some of these screenshots. I think, yeah, these are different than the ones in EGM. So yeah, like I said before, kind of that arcadey racer that has a lot going on. You can see, very interesting tracks. It's got penguins, it's got all kinds of modes, but yeah, it just didn't live up to, I guess, its own promise in a way. Ooh, PGR again. Bring back PGR, Microsoft, please. Bring back PGR and bring back Geometry Wars. Please, 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 please. Alrighty, Microsoft comes clean. Were they hiding something? What's the deal here? So, we're talking about the price point of the 360 and the two models. Yeah. All right, so we got Peter Moore, kind of a big name video game executive at the time. I think went into football, if I'm not mistaken, for Liverpool later on. By football, I mean soccer. He's talking about, the console here and hyping up how many games there's going to be. This was all part of the whole, the 360 is going to be so flexible. There's going to be so many options. There's going to be so much choice, As we know, that didn't really pan out that way. And, I can't really sit here and truly think that they themselves were like, oh yeah, we're definitely giving choices to people. Not trying to be like conspiracy theory or anything. I think that somebody somewhere recognized that the 360 costs a lot of money. And they said like, hey, is there a way that we can sell a cheaper version of it so that we can get some more sales? But I don't know the whole story behind like the two split, or maybe, if they were competing visions for the product, or maybe if they truly didn't know which one would be the one that takes off. I don't know. I don't know that stuff. It's just kind of how it felt as a customer back then and how it feels today looking back on it. Over here, we got the Game Boy Micro, small, stylish, and bringing a big game. So the GamePro Micro, I love how it looks. I love the design of it. It's so fun. But I never really understood its appeal. Yeah, it's tiny and it can fit in a lot of pockets, but whatever, right? You can fit a lot of Game Boys in a lot of pockets. The Micro is so small. If I'm not misremembering, it has a smaller screen than the actual Game Boy Advance, which is just wild to me. I don't know if the Game Boy Micro is really considered a success, or if it was just like, I don't know, maybe they made it based on repurposed factory parts or something like that. I have no idea, but I just really couldn't understand the tiny screen aspect of it. But hey, if you like the Micro or you gamed on the Micro, let me know. I want to hear your Micro experiences. For someone like me, especially with my eyesight not being so hot, this is just like torture. But I wish I liked it because it's so cool. It's tiny. Let's move on. We got some more looks here at the Xbox 360 peripherals, some of what we already saw at the EGM issue. Yeah, there were so many freaking peripherals. All these cables, like VGA component, like, is it going to be HD? Is it not going to be HD? There was so much HD misinformation at the time and lack of information. I remember going to a friend's house and, he was I would probably estimate well off. Like, he had a lot of advanced tech for the era that a lot of people didn't have, and his Xbox was sending a 480p stretch signal to his amazing HD TV. It was just like a lot of situations like that in this era where people didn't really understand what was going on. It took time to educate people about, hey, these are what these cables do. These are sort of the resolutions you want to be looking at. This is the settings you want to set on your TV. It wasn't a smooth and instant transition, right? And then over here we got a poll on GamePro.com where people are saying they're going to buy the what do you call it? The hard drive version of the Xbox, which of course we know that's how it went. Oh, hey, is this the first mention of the Nintendo Revolution that we've seen in this video? It might be. Put hopes in the Nintendo Revolution. Come on. Why we gotta make them fight like that? We got some gear reviews here, and this chair grabs my attention. So 4.5 out of 5, right? Interesting. Do you really want to be gaming on a chair that has its own controller? What's the quality of that controller gonna be like? Let's be real here. That's not gonna be so good, right? But you got the little speakers there, and got the footrest, you know. How much does this cost? $500? So $500 by 2005 standards for this? Nah. Sorry, but nah. Let's move on. What do we got here? Oh, GameTap. GameTap. One of those services where you can pay a subscription and you can play classic games that were emulated, things like that. Unfortunately, GameTap didn't really work out for a number of reasons. That can be its own video too, but it was a really cool idea and also pretty well ahead of its time. Just to be able to, you know, you pay a fee and you get all the classic greats, you know, and you can just play them. It's an idea that has morphed into many different services over the years, and to this day, we still don't really have a great way of preserving video games that isn't just emulation or brute force emulation. And of course, different companies have different stances on emulation and things like that. And so, yeah, video game preservation is it's a whole, you know, different topic, but it's cool that GameTap, I'm sure they weren't coming at it from the perspective of video game preservation, but it's cool that GameTap in that era was kind of trying to do something with that, even if that wasn't necessarily their goal. Now, we got another ad for Genji here. We got a good review for the Nyko charger case for the PSP. And, yep, 2020, corporations control everything. Oh God, we got to move on before the darkness sets in. Soul Calibur again, Need for Speed. And here we go, cover feature. If the GTA series lit a fire under the ass of the action genre, then Saints Row burns down the whole damned house. Here's how Saints Row in just one afternoon became one of the most addictive games we've ever laid our hands on. Wow, that is high praise for basically, you know, a cover story, a video game preview. And I'm a little bit of a, I guess, skeptic or cynic when I see stuff like that, because, you know, it's the cover of the magazine and you're giving it such incredible praise. I just naturally have a defense mechanism where I question, like, hey, is it really that good? Or you kind of exaggerating a little bit because it's the cover, you know? I'm not saying GamePro's, you know, taking a bribe or anything like that, but I'm saying the situation kind of creates the situation is a little awkward because, you know, game magazines and content creators today, you know, they always risk getting quote unquote blacklisted, which isn't really a thing, but they always risk damaging relationships with people that can give them access to the games and to the coverage that they need for their business. So it's always such a tricky balance. But either way, Saints Row. Saints Row is beloved, but Saints Row 1 isn't really a kind of revolutionary game that you think of when you think of the greatest games of all time. So seeing this insanely high praise here is a little bit silly, but that doesn't take away from Saints Row 1 being really cool. So yeah, it is kind of a quote-unquote GTA clone, but that's really reductionist. So Saints Row ushered in a bunch of multiplayer, which is really cool. So they basically out GTA in some ways, and then didn't have the quality to match GTA in other ways, because, you know, it's a different product, they're focusing on different things, but it was really cool to have that multiplayer in Saints Row. People really love that. And think about it this way, right? You have some players that they would have played this before they played the next GTA game or their first GTA game or something like that. So this is their point of reference. And it's not a bad point of reference at all. And you can see also how GTA also took some of the better aspects of Saints Row and put it into their own games. You can see that through some of the online stuff or the quality of life stuff or the customization features. Saints Row is dope. I don't know if it's, the GTA killer. Why can't both games exist? But I'm a big fan of Saints Row 3 in particular. That's my favorite in the series. And that's when the Saints games really, I think, found a unique identity that wasn't just like, we're early 2000s gangsters, let's fucking go, that kind of thing, you know? So Saints 3, more of a comedic approach, and then Saints 4 became like a full-on comedic approach. And I love Saints 4 too. I know a lot of people don't necessarily love that, but it's just kind of what I'm into. And then the final Saints Row after that, unfortunately, kind of disappointed everyone. But yeah, it's great here. You know, you shoot where you want to shoot. Say goodbye to auto-aiming. We got them talking about the Xbox Live features and multiplayer and things like that. I think if you are into the GTA style of game at this time, maybe you're a teenager, Saints Row 1 is really tickling you. And I think that, I know that I would love for Saints Row to really make a comeback. Personally, I would want it to be more like Saints 3, but even if it was like 2 or like 4, whatever the case may be, just more good Saints Row games. It doesn't hurt anyone, right? But let's move on. We got an ad here for 50-cent Bulletproof. Not to be confused with Blood on the Sand. Bulletproof was not a game that people really enjoyed for the most part. Maybe, you know, if you're a really big fan of 50 Cent during this era, maybe then you got something going on for you. But it just wasn't the most high quality product, unfortunately. But yeah, after that, you know, you got Blood on the Sand, which was not a game with, you know, a massive scope, but what it tried to do, it did really well. It gave you that G-Unit simulator that you might want. And of course, 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, not Bulletproof, is famous for making you hit those big-ass ramps and for hating on helicopters. We got the Gretzky ad again. We got more, you know, kind of like anti-GTA stuff. So this is kind of interesting, right? The 7 Deadly Sins of GTA. And it's basically like a complaint piece that's Saints Row themed still. That's basically just anti-GTA. And I'm just sitting here like, dog, is this because you put Saints Row on the cover? Is this what we're doing here? But, you know, we're talking about, we're saying it's immature. I mean, yes, GTA is immature in many ways. We're talking about wasting talent. We're talking about like silly things, really. GTA, legendary franchise. It's not my favorite franchise, obviously, as you may have guessed from just how I talk about it. But absolutely legendary franchise. Absolutely one of the biggest ones in all of video games. So to take out like a page of your magazine right beside the Saints Row section to be like, yo, GTA is not that good, or like, these are the things that suck about it. It just kind of, I don't know, rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't really, doesn't really tell me anything of value. Also, maybe I'm just reaching here, but they bundled all of the quote-unquote hip-hop / urban / crime things together. You got true crime, you got 50 Cent, you got Saints Row, you got GTA. It's all bundled together. And this was an era where a lot of marketing was they were trying to appeal to the urban nomad. That is how Sony put it for their PSP. And really, really, when they say urban nomad, that's just code for we hope black people like the things that we do. And it just, it makes my skin crawl with how like tone deaf or maybe cringy it is. Like, urban nomad, come on, guys, come on. What are you doing? What are you doing? But anyway, we got a look at Call of Duty 2 here. War never looked so good. Gosh, what a thing to say, right? But it's true. Call of Duty 2 did look amazing. I remember they made a huge deal about the smoke tech in Call of Duty. We can kind of see it a little bit here. And the smoke looked really great in Call of Duty. We got an ad for Without Warning, and if I remember right, like everyone hated this shooter. I might be mistaking it for another game, but I think this was really kind of critically panned. I'll double check after, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I think people didn't like this one quite a bit. And it's over from your friends at Circle Studio. That's what it was. Now then, we have a look at Condemned Criminal Origins. Like I said before, kind of a sleeper hit. I wish that the Condemned series was still running. Gosh, that would be so much fun. Of course, we gotta have some Juicy Fruit sours. I remember all of the Juicy Fruit ad campaigns during this time. It was all about being kind of random, silly. Never really clicked with me, but I mean, Juicy Fruit is very popular, so it clearly worked. So now we have a look at GRA, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. Can Ghost Recon's solid military reputation be fit enough for the Xbox 360? By Four Eyed Dragon. So it's interesting. Well, I was going to say something, but then this caught my attention. Future Soldier, which is the name of a future Ghost Recon game. But it's interesting because Ghost Recon, GRA, it kind of, I don't know, man. It just lacked on the tactical department. Like I said before, it was all right. It's fine. I like it. But I just didn't scratch that tactical itch that maybe was being promised. But it had some really great CG trailers. I remember those were amazing at the time. Not that that really impacts the game, but they did a really good job of kind of selling you the vision of the future in terms of the series and the just kind of HDness or next genness in general. So over here, we got a list of 360 titles in development. Let's see if we can spot anything that maybe didn't happen. Chrome Hounds, yeah, mech game, hell yeah. We got, Frame City Killer. Prey, of course, came out after a crazy development period. You could make video essays or books about Prey, not to be confused with Prey. They're two different games. We got Ridge Racer, Scarface. Oh yeah, Scarface. That came out. Stranglehold. John Woo's Stranglehold. Oh man, that was just like a throwback game by the time it came out. Just, slow-mo, shoot everything in sight, very stylish. Not a lot of depth to it, but I have a big soft spot for Stranglehold, for just kind of knowing what it is and focusing on that. And then World Air Force Taito. I have no memory of this game. I don't know if this game came out. I'll have to double check after. All right. Suffering, Ties That Bind. We talked about it a little bit. We talked about being predatory. If you want to be predatory, make sure to hit like on this video. Oh my God. Spartan Total Warrior. All right. Hit Games, a special report. So this is interesting. We're not going to go through the entire feature, but it's looking at how depictions of certain groups of people or organizations in video games can be problematic, like how some Haitian communities were upset with the Kill All Haitians mission in GTA. It's a really kind of layered and difficult topic to talk about in a video like this, where we're not really focusing on it. And like the women in video games portrayal, it deserves so much more attention than we can give it in a quick segment here. But it's interesting just to see this stuff was being talked about in 2005, and it's still being talked about today. And we're making progress, I think, frequently, but there's always setbacks as well. And it's kind of catching my attention what font here they used for these quotes. And just like, huh. the quotes here, they kind of look like SS font, I don't know that I love the look of that, but that's, it's kind of like what they're going for in this article. And this article also talks about how video games can essentially be used to gosh, the algorithm is gonna hate me, but how video games can be used to radicalize people. And we now know, many years down the road, that yeah, it can absolutely be done through video games, just like any entertainment format, any piece of media, right? Anything that's consumed. I'm not singling out video games as being the only ones, but it's interesting how even in 2005, this stuff was top of mind, getting its own features in magazines, and we're still talking about it today. And that's because progress never ends, right? There's just no end to kind of improving. How should I say this politely? There's no end to eliminating jerks and hateful people, right? Because more will take their place, or others will take their place, and it's just something that you always need to be vigilant for. And again, this is another one of those topics, like, it attracts certain crowds in the comments and things like that. I'm not looking for that on this video. If you're gonna be upset about that stuff here, like, peace out. I'm just gonna ban you, or whatever the case may be. But we can talk about these important topics in more depth in a different video, because yeah, you can spend hours talking about them. Next up, we got a religion gaming thing that I'm not even gonna touch that, dog. Let's just move on. Dragon Quest, Genji. We got Zathura here, based on a new adventure from the world of Jumanji. Interesting. I don't have any memory of this, but this is a movie tie-in game. I'm gonna guess it didn't take the world by storm, didn't set anything on fire, but I'm not too sure about this one. We got a retro feature here. So even in 2005, right, we're looking at 2D retro games that we're still looking at to this day. So this kind of looks at the different collections and scores them based on their fun factor. Capcom 4.5 for this collection. The Tecmo Classic Arcade Collection, not that fun. It's interesting because as cool as some old games are, and as legendary as they are, it's just tough to go back to them, right? It's in the same way that a kid growing up today, they might not want to watch a movie from the 1950s or something like that, because sensibilities and standards are just so different. So it's interesting to even try to score like the fun factor, because your view is going to be so colored by your own nostalgia and by your own current expectations. So I don't know, like a kid today, if they played the Capcom Classic Collection, they might give it a fun factor of 1 or something. Not every game is capable of standing the test of time, and that's totally fine. Not every game needs to. It's not a requirement. It's cool when it does, but yeah, some games age better than others. Breaking news, some games age better than others. Another gun ad. We've got preview for Resident Evil 4, but this is for the PS2 version, unless I am blind. Yep, PS2 version. Of course, we got a big focus on Miss Wong here. And, it's kind of funny seeing like a quote-unquote preview for a game that everyone knows is absolutely legendary, and moving the genre forward, and even moving just video game third-person aiming forward. But, of course, you got to talk about some of the new stuff, including Ada Wong. And you got a preview here for Call of Duty 2. Big red one, the Treyarch game, not the sort of mainline at the time Infinity Ward game. Another preview for the James Bond game. So, really interesting. I didn't play this one myself. I wonder I don't think this is a cover system. I think this is just the character crouching. Not too sure, but I don't think this game had like a cover system. It'll be interesting to see. Gears of War obviously revolutionized gaming with its high quality cover system. It wasn't the first game ever to have a cover system, but it was definitely the one that made it a whole big thing. We got a preview here for Jack X Combat Racing, so it's combat and it's racing. You can you can spin it as a kart racer, like Mario Kart is combat racing too. But I think they're going for, a more adult thing. They're going for an edgier thing. I think this is the era where Jack's got a soul patch, or maybe not this one, but he's got he's got that chin beard. Kind of strange choice maybe for the franchise, but that was kind of the case back in the day for a lot of franchises. They weren't afraid to try out different genres and branch out and see how it is, because it wasn't such a gargantuan task technologically and financially to try to do that with your existing franchise. We got a preview for Ratchet here. We got an ad for Frogger coming to your consoles and mobile devices and handhelds as well. Of course, Frogger is a legendary game, but I don't think anyone's really kind of successfully reinvented it or created a new Frogger experience that people are super excited about. In the way that Pac-Man has seen, Championship Edition DX, stuff like that. We got Need for Speed preview here, and we got some more, of its era stuff here. So, Top 5 Video Game Babes, sponsored by Gamer Graphics, which was, if I'm remembering right, skins for your consoles. So you can, basically like decals. They have this like Playboy University one, so... Yeah, man. Yeah. Christy, Dixie, BloodRayne, Jill, of course, Lara Croft. These lists were always like Lara Croft or Lara Croft's number one. Like, come on, grow up. Come on, let's go. Let's move on. Soul Calibur 3 preview. I have a lot of memories of Soul Calibur 4, 2, and 1. I didn't really play 3, but I know that it was well liked. It's cool to see some of this stuff like in screenshot form. How did they end the preview? I want to know. So technically, Soul Calibur 3 is performing appropriately well for an end-of-generation PS2 release, and though blah, 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 we're confident the revamped engine can handle the proper melee mayhem. Yeah, that's cool. We got a Yu-Gi-Oh! Ad here. Let's go. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I know, obviously, a lot of players from this era maybe didn't stick around with the game because the game has completely changed for the most part, but... Oh man, I wish I could play Yu-Gi-Oh! Every day. I cannot though, nor should I. Got a preview here for one of those 3D, 2D Castlevanias that didn't necessarily reach, the height of the series or even the middle of the series. It's also interesting how in this issue, it feels like maybe it was made before the EGM one. Some of the way that they're doing their games coverage, because it's some of the stuff that was covered in EGM seems like it was covered much closer to like the release date or whatever the case may be. Whereas here we're looking at stuff like a preview for Marvel Nemesis, but we already saw a review for that in EGM. So interesting to see that split between the two magazines. But magazine production is a whole thing. All right, what do we got next? We got an Air Force ad. Still don't want to join the Air Force, but thank you for asking. Battlefield and Battlefront side by side, which is really interesting because I feel, a lot of Battlefield folks like Battlefront and vice versa. And on PC, Battlefield would always have Star Wars mods, things like that. So that's fun to see. I got to shout out to this screenshot. I don't know why, but something about it just looks really good. Like the lighting of this hallway, I realize it's very quote unquote, simple lighting, but it works really well for the look they're going for. All right, next up. Ooh, preview for SOCOM. I wish SOCOM would come back. Whoa, again. Let's try this again. What am I doing wrong? I was pressing shift. I wish SOCOM would come back. It was kind of like a third-person tactical-y online enabled PS2 shooter. People really, really, and reviewers love the early SOCOMs. Unfortunately, later entries didn't really kind of live up to people's expectations or the hype. And I think, if I'm remembering right, the last time SOCOM was around was when PSN went down for a super long period of time on PS3, and that just kind of killed that game, even without considering whether it was like a good game or not. It just, launching an online only game when PSN was down for a record amount of time was, yeah, it just wasn't good. It was unfortunate, but SOCOM. It's kind of tough to try to play those games today, just in terms of like control scheme, because shooters have evolved so much. But hey, I would love to see a new SOCOM. We got preview for Gun and SSX. Oh my goodness, SSX, another series that, why don't we have SSX right now? Like where is my SSX at? SSX, if you're not familiar with it, yeah, it's like a skiing and eventually snowboarding game, but so much more than that. You got racing, you got tricking. It's like Tony Hawk, but racing, if you kind of think of it that way, and on snow. And it was just so satisfying to play. You had the like crazy good frame rate. It was very stable. SSX, just incredible run of games there. I know a lot of people really disliked the last SSX that they did because they had a lot of weird survival elements and things like that. But the core SSX gameplay in that and the freedom it gave you on the maps that just tried to focus on being SSX, those were amazing. The core of that game to me is so damn good. Bring SSX back, please. We got a West Coast Customs game. So like what? LA Rush. Oh, you know what? This game came out and kind of got junk reviews. An MTV game. So West Coast Customs obviously was the company that was doing the stuff on the show Pimp My Ride that Exhibit was hosting, where people would get their cars, for the lack of a better term, pimped out with all sorts of upgrades. And usually it was stuff that was like really extra. Like, we put a aquarium in the back of your car because I heard you like aquariums. And a lot of people talked about how the actual work from this company just wasn't very good, or it wasn't always safe what they did to the cars. So a lot of times you actually ended up worse off with your pimped out ride than you were before. Burnout Revenge Review 4. Or that's Burnout Legend, sorry, 5 fun factor out of 5. What did they say about sound? 4.5. That's it. What does that even mean, right, for a game like Burnout? Because it's got a slapping soundtrack, it's got good car noises. What does sound 4.5 even mean? Let's see if we can very quickly just see them talking about sound in here. Yeah, I'm not really seeing... I'm also not reading word for word, but I'm not really seeing like talk of sound. So... yeah, whatever. It doesn't really matter. We're just, cherry picking stuff here to talk about. But anyway, Burnout Revenge, love it. Burnout Legends, love it. I think we got some like scan issues here. I'm not really sure what's going on, but we shouldn't be missing any pages. So, hey, give people GamePro, and yeah, let's move on. This cover, in my mind, is just burned into my mind. I have this magazine, actually, like the physical version of it. I don't have a lot of gaming magazines, just maybe, I don't know, 20 or something like that. It's not really a collection or anything like that, but I don't know. I'm a big Dragon Ball fan, and I remember seeing this and being like, yeah, Goku looking cool as hell over here. All right, so Ninja Gaiden Black. We got a review for it. So if you remember on EGM, they couldn't get it in the magazine. They had it on the 1UP website. EGM gives it 5 out of 5 fun factor, which tracks with the general reception to Ninja Gaiden Black. Character action game, super difficult, super precise. It is a series that's produced some really, really crazy, challenging gameplay, and it's kind of like, It's not a Souls game. Don't get me wrong, right? It's not like that. It's more of a. If we talk about it in more recent games, it's more of like a Bayonetta or more of a DMC5, that kind of thing. But you can see how some aspects of this, including boss fights and things like that, could help inspire Souls games. And certainly, if you are into like punishing combat, you're probably playing, the Souls games now, but you probably played Ninja Gaiden Black back in the day as well. Next up, we've got what am I looking at here? Romancing Saga. Okay, I don't know why my eyes can really focus on that. I'm guessing JRPG. It's a square joint, and then just based on the screenshots and things like that, I don't know too much about this game. So I'm gonna maybe throw up a video of it if I can find one, and you'll learn when you're looking at the video, and I'll learn when I'm editing the video. But it sounds like maybe it's kind of like it's got multiple paths and things like that, kind of like Octopath Traveler, perhaps. I don't know. We'll find out. Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks GamePro gave it a 4 out of 5 in terms of fun. That tracks. Dungeons and Dragons ad. We got Genji. So Genji was really liked by GamePro, not so much by EGM and kind of general reviews, or less so, I should say. It wasn't necessarily disliked, but the folks at GamePro really enjoyed this one. Got an ad for Trauma Center again. Suffering, it's getting those 3.5s out of 5s, which tracks with its general reception. Indigo Prophecy or Fahrenheit, getting some good scores over here. That is a hell of a mustache. Look at this guy. Wow, what a mustache. Jeez. We love Katamari, getting a good score. Dynasty Warriors 5. Here we go. Gamer Graphics, get skinned. It's your... that's weird. It's your console. Shouldn't it look this way? I guess they mean like your way. Shouldn't that be phrased? Shouldn't it look your way? I don't know. Obviously, we know what they're going for, but I'm just being a nitpicky bastard. So I've never had game skins or game skins. I've never had skins in any of my stuff. It's just not necessarily something that appeals to me. But hey, this Jack Daniels one or Jack Daniels ripoff one is kind of like a neat idea, I guess. I have a PS4 controller with like a Persona skin on it. That's the only thing I've ever had a skin on, and it's just kind of like, all right, whatever. I kind of prefer the controller design without it, but it's fine. Different strokes for different folks, no big deal. Urban Reign, we talked about it. Advertising itself as the first 60 FPS fighting game, which I didn't fact check right for this video. But didn't get a great score here, didn't get a great score primarily anywhere, but like a lot of these games from this era, it's got a bit of a small cult following that would still like to see more Urban Reign. Spartan Total Warrior, gets kind of a decent score. And then we got, what do we got here? Relive the Movie. We got a Star Wars fan club, I guess. Is that what this is? There's just, it's just pulling my eyes in so many different directions. But anyway, another ad here for Total Overdose, Shaolin Monks. And now we got a preview for Black and White 2. So Black and White 2 from... oh no, why am I blanking on the studio name? The guys that make Fable and Peter Molyneux. Is it Lionhead Games? Why am I blanking on the name? Lionhead Studios. There we go, yeah. Black and White 2 is kind of a god sim. I wouldn't really call it a city builder. I would really call it a god sim, which is kind of what a lot of people called this style of game at the time. It didn't set the world on fire, and it kind of wasn't liked by Black and White diehards. Generally, reviews were not terrible for it, but people talked about how the campaign structure and missions weren't very interesting, and the general game kind of lacked depth that perhaps was found in the first game or other games of similar genres. We got a preview for Fear here, and wow, Fear is such a beloved first-person horror-themed shooter, and it really had incredible AI for its time. Like, AI enemies would try to flank you, they would take cover. They were more coordinated than a lot of, or it's probably fair to say all corridor crawl type shooters at the time. The gunplay in it was awesome. It had a lot of like cool slow-mo effects. Fear is just so great, and visually it was an absolute powerhouse. It reviewed amazingly well as well. People were saying like Fear is the next Half-Life, and they do different things. I wouldn't really compare them, but yeah, Fear is fantastic. I love Fear. Another thing I love, Battle for Middle Earth, another game that got killer reviews. So this was an RTS where you're not building like individual units. When you build a unit, it comes out as like 5 horsemen or something like that, and that was a really fun way of doing things. And they put these games out on Xbox as well. And whether or not you like Lord of the Rings doesn't really matter. These RTSs, the 2 of them that they put out, it just slapped. They were great. And on PC, they had amazing mods as well. They had MOBA style mods too, if that's what you were into. Battle for Middle Earth, wow, great RTS games. It's a shame that we don't get them anymore. Another great RTS game that I just personally don't love, but I recognize is obviously awesome. Empire at War Star Wars. So this game has legs to this day. It's still being played. It got a update on Steam to be 64-bit, I think. It's got workshop support on Steam. It's crazy how this game has stood the test of time. It's a really beloved RTS. I don't love how it controls. It's a very kind of unique control system for an RTS on how you click and how you expand compared to other RTS games. I think it makes sense for what they're going for. Like Petroglyph, they obviously know how to make RTSs, but for me personally, not a super big fan, but of course I recognize that this game is rad and lots of people love it. Now then, we got an ad for Oblivion, the RPG for the next generation. And wow, that's a tagline that's actually true. Obviously, Morrowind was a huge game, a big deal, an RPG that people absolutely love, but Oblivion made RPGs quote unquote cool. Not that, I'm not saying RPGs are lame or anything like that, but cool in the sense of mainstream gamers or more casual gamers, whatever you want to call them. They were enjoying Oblivion. It made RPGs accessible to so many more people. And some diehards of the series or the genre are kind of not into that. They're kind of like, Bethesda makes games that are too simplistic. They're barely RPGs, etc., etc., etc. But I think now, with hindsight and now with how many great games we have these days, I think it's totally, fine that Bethesda chooses to make this style of game more accessible. You got more hardcore RPGs out there now. You got your Witchers, you got your Kingdom Come. It's totally fine that we have this variety. I don't think it's we're losing anything by having Bethesda making these kind of more casual RPGs. And it's also all relative. Like I wouldn't call Oblivion a casual RPG myself, but it's really for people that are really into RPGs that it doesn't go as in depth on a lot of systems or mechanics as it could. But of course, Oblivion is a absolutely legendary game. I can totally see a remake of Oblivion happening one day, or even Morrowind or Skyrim. Like it's bound to happen with how everything gets remade. So anyway, we got Fable: The Lost Chapters here as a review, 4.5 out of 5. This was Fable with more content. Dungeon Siege 2 again, like we talked about before, very beloved. Another great review for it. We got some previews here for mobile games, handheld games. DK, King of Swing, I don't remember this game at all. I remember the title of it, but I couldn't tell you what the genre was. It looks like some kind of specifically it looks like some kind of specific platformer where you're not just jumping, but like climbing and stuff. So let's see. By alternating button presses, you can make DK climb on larger... Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with this game. I'll definitely play it at some point in the future through my totally Walmart purchased cart that I definitely purchased at Walmart. We got Age of Empires here as well on the DS. They took Age of Empires and they turned it into a turn-based version, which is a really interesting take made by Digital Eclipse and Backbone and published by Majesco. Again, this is another game that's kind of a blind spot for me. Obviously, I know Age of Empires, but a turn-based version of this? Interesting, yeah. If it's like Advance Wars, like they kind of talk about it, I definitely want I want to see what that's all about and how it turned out. Metal Gear Acid 2. Whoa. Okay. Metal Gear Acid. So it's a series that doesn't get a lot of love. And it's interesting because Metal Gear Acid 2 is a leader in what like indie games are today. And what I mean by that is that it's an isometric turn-based strategy card game. Think about how many roguelike card games are out there these days, and not just as card games, but across different genres where you play as cards or stand-ins for cards. And while Acid was more of a traditional turn-based strategy game that like XCOM, let's say, for example, in terms of its core mechanics and things like that, it was all done through cards. And yeah, it wasn't a roguelite, but or roguelites or the roguelike, but it was I think influential in a lot of ways that people don't notice. And it certainly wasn't the first strategy card game, don't get me wrong. It's just interesting how much of Metal Gear Acid 2 you can see in modern indie games today, specifically across rogue or card stand-in type games. But yeah, the Acid series, it has a dedicated fan base, but the more general kind of Metal Gear fan base, or the more quote-unquote casual gamers, not really that into it. And I understand it's more of a niche product, but damn, I love me some Metal Gear Acid gameplay. We got a Gunstar Superheroes preview. We got Sonic Rush, which people were into. We got a virtual tennis review. What do we got next? Trauma Center review. All right. They're giving it 4.5 out of 5 for fun, but that's actually really funny. Graphics, not that good. Sound, not that good. Control, awesome. And then fun factor, yeah. See. Fun factor, the most important thing. We got the future here for what is this, like a college or something like that? Yeah, so in the future, everyone turns into a Hulk. That's just confirmed. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Phoenix Wright getting a good score. You'd love to see it. Objection. All right, let's move on. We got, for a second, I thought this was Need for Speed Underground because that was a common like image that they use for, but no. This is for Midway Arcade Treasures 3. Then we got a multiple page ad for Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1. We got Cameo, NBA Live, more poker stuff, real players, real casinos, real poker, Game Boy Advance. Y'all, nothing wrong with enjoying a card game, right? But for a game that's really kind of more focused on the gambling aspect of it, if you're getting this for Game Boy Advance, maybe, just maybe, you should ask yourself if you think you have an addiction or something like that. It's just good to ask yourself, to check in on yourself. Rated E for everyone, simulated gambling. That's interesting. I wonder if by today's standards it would be rated E, or if it would get an automatic M or even a T. So anyway, we got a review here of NHL 2K6. People really love this game, and the fans of the 2K franchise, for NHL specifically, were very passionate, very diehard, but NHL introduced the right analog, or NHL from EA introduced analog stick controls, and after that, it kind of became GG for the 2K games, and many other reasons too, but the 2K games were really beloved. All the 2K sports games that aren't around today were really beloved. We got a review for Tiger Woods, NBA preview here. We got Dragon Quest again. We got a Shonen Jump. Okay, I had a phase. A lot of us have phases. I had a phase where I was buying Shonen Jump. I want to say this phase lasted for like a year. I don't even know why. I didn't really enjoy or care about most of the things that were being published in Shonen Jump. I don't really care about Naruto, and I don't care about everything else they had at the time. I think maybe... no, I'm not going to try to remember what they had at the time. But I remember reading like some of the Dragon Ball stuff they had in there, and just being like, I mean, I love Dragon Ball, but why am I buying this to read Dragon Ball? Like, I don't know. It was just a weird phase. I don't know. Some more reviews here. Romancing Saga, Radiata Stories. Ooh, not the greatest review for Romancing Saga, unfortunately. Star Wars. Code Vault. Cheat codes. We gotta bring cheat codes back. Gosh. Remember cheat codes, y'all? Let's see. What do we have for Metal Gear Substance? So unlock all mission characters. At the main menu, select missions and then enter your name as enter your password to take immediate effect. Ah, man. Cheat codes. Ah, love cheat codes. Chartbusters. Okay. So NPD. So I couldn't remember if it was NDP or NPD. It's NPD. July hottest titles. I think this is the same list that we saw in EGM, right? So it should be the same order, or at the very least very similar. We don't need to focus on it. Ooh, a Yu-Gi-Oh code. What's this? A Grandpa's Card Shop. Face the password machine. Press R to blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, yeah. So you can enter every single card into your collection by putting in the card's unique identifier. It's kind of jokes that they are like, here's a few of the cards. Because there's like thousands of cards. But of course, I'm sure they published on their website some stuff about that. By the way, that reminds me, GamePro. It still exists in a website format, I think, in Germany, Spain, and a couple of other regions. But I don't know that if the magazine in those regions exists at all. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. What are we looking at here? Oh, Pelican, like accessory company. We got Frantics again. We got, wait a minute. Is that the end? Wow. Okay. I just feel like we really blitzed through that last part. But I guess it's just covering a bunch of games that we've already seen before. So, okay. As we've talked about, GamePro kind of focused more on the features aside of game coverage. EGM focused more on direct game coverage, but they both have, some of both. And this was a really interesting transition period. Like I said, it's just like we're about to enter the Xbox 360 era, but based on these magazines, there's not that much hype for it, right? And that's kind of an interesting perspective because online people were getting extremely hyped, like message boards, things like that. But these magazines, part of it is just, how magazines are created, the timing of everything. These magazines, they got to tell you about stuff that's going on currently. They can't look too much towards the future. And of course, you can't just like speculate about how things will play out. There's only so many pages you have. There's only so much you can do in a magazine. But it doesn't really feel like we're about to start a revolution, right? And that's fair because when the Xbox 360 came out, the sort of HD and online connectivity revolution, it wasn't overnight. It took time. It took years. It took multiple iterations of Xbox Live and the stuff Sony was doing. It took hardware revisions. All that stuff happened over a longer period of time. But this is what it looks like right before, right as we're on the cusp of it. And it's such a cool era of gaming. And as we're going to see in future videos, as we look at more issues, there were so many new video games, new IP being created in this kind of early 360 era. It was, I don't know if it's fair to call it a golden age of new IP and developers doing new things, because that kind of happens in every generation, some more than others, but it really felt like a golden era of console video games. Now, of course, we didn't really talk about PC at all here, and that's because PC kind of lives in a different world at this point in time. PC gaming and console gaming were pretty dang different, whereas these days, you're getting similar experiences. Of course, PC experiences are way more robust, usually with graphical options and other settings and things like that. I'm primarily a PC gamer myself, so it's interesting looking at PC stuff as well, but we're not going to do that for this video just because it's already like 65 hours long. But it'll be interesting at some point to compare also how the console experience becomes more PC-like. Oh, we got hot coffee over here. It'll be interesting to compare how the console experience becomes more PC-like over time. Anyway, let's stop it here, right? We talked so much. By we, I mean me. This was a slice of a video game life in November 2005, right before video games were about to go through a slow but massive revolution. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I hope you maybe have some nostalgia about some of this stuff or learn something new. My name is Poplove. If you like this video, oh my god, please like and subscribe, because that will tell me that I should make more of these, and I'd be more than happy to make more of these if you guys are interested. But for now, I'm gonna realize that I don't have a way of signing off this video and probably should have thought of a more thoughtful outro. But 2020, corporations control everything.